Hey, welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ed Greer, and today we have an illustrious guest. I shall reveal him right now. It is my
Hey,
man, Jeff
hey,
Johnson.
everybody. Illustrious. That's the nicest thing people say.
Dude, well, first of all, you're an illustrator, so you're
Right.
by
No, I know.
definition
It's
illustrious.
apropos. I love it. I love it. I love that opening too.
Oh, dude, you know what's funny? It's a garage band loop that I
Uh-huh.
stole and
Right.
added some different stuff to it and chopped it, and there you go. That's my theme song, baby. It's all free use.
I love it. What did you I mean, we'll talk about this later on, but I need to know how you put that little video together and how you load it up in StreamYard because I've been working on one of my own. That
Oh,
same sort of
sick.
little opening. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can give a lot of the credit to Ron, but yeah, we'll talk about that off air. But we are here today to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, our man Neal Adams.
What a
This
he's just a he's an illustrator.
Yeah, dude. Well, all of us pale in comparison, and that's kind of why we're here. As you
Yeah.
can see, this is Neil in his cups when he was a younger man.
Right.
Look at those beautiful hairy forearms. I love it.
Yep.
He was always a handsome man, always a muscular dude, even up until his dying day. He was like a big guy with a big personality and an outsized impact on every fucking thing. This is him
Hmm.
closer to today. But still handsome. And look at that head of hair. I don't give a shit if that comes out of a bottle. That's a head of hair.
It was solid. I mean, he was still we interviewed him not too long ago on the Drink and Draw show, and
Hmm.
he was full of energy. Like
Yes.
he was drawing, he was doing everything. He was hanging out. He gave us an incredible interview and gave us incredible like financial advice, art advice, just living advice. He was the godfather to so many artists and just people in the industry, even who didn't draw.
I mean, and I just want to get this out of the way because this is going to be very much about his art. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like I mean, just look at the way that he's able to render so many different characters. I mean,
Mhm.
in this frame, he's doing Spider Man, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, Superman, and you never. There's so many artists where you kind of feel like I don't really like your this guy. And maybe there were some people that Neil Adams didn't draw as good as another artist, but I'm searching my mind, and every time I see him interpret a character,
Yeah, I don't
it's
know.
either the best or near the top best version of that character.
I mean, obviously, his Green Lantern and Green Arrow can't be touched, and his Batman is unbeatable. But I love the way he did Tarzan.
Yeah, oh man, dude. While you're bullshitting, this is one of the things in our presentation. If I'm picking the
Oh,
right slide,
oh, nice.
is we're gonna look at some things like this, where it's just
Hmm.
like these sketches. I want to look. I have several Pinterest boards because I am a beta cuck soy boy and an
Right,
illustrator.
right.
So manly men like myself use Pinterest for like gun reference and
Oh yeah,
workouts. You know what I mean, brother? Yeah, I use Pinterest in a very masculine way. But one of the things I do is collect sketches because a lot of people take pictures from different sketchbooks and stuff
right.
that they've purchased over the time. So I found things like this where it's just like to see the unfinished majesty. And you see the heads, those little squirrels. Those little swirls are like little heads of guys who are
Right.
about to get the chic thrown at them or whatever.
Yeah.
And the classic lady in repose, like, fuck, this guy's really handling business for me, and I'll just stay out of the way.
God, there's so much life and composition in just that unfinished sketch. Just the way his leg leads into her arm, which comes back around, and that whole side is balanced. It's just a mastery. I mean, I don't even know if he plans to do that. I have to plan every little aspect of composition. I have to do the math, and it has to work for me, and I have to flip the page, and I spend way too long with the minutia of composition and layout and stuff. I mean, I bet he just didn't even think about it, and it just is still perfect.
Well, I mean, I think he's probably artist, and you're being quite modest, but you've internalized a lot of things that people intellectualize.
Mm,
And I think that's probably the same way with Neil. The
probably.
you know, so I'm looking at also things like this here.
Oh
This
yeah.
is I had this in a book. I forgot exactly what the title is. Let me actually grab it off the shelf here.
Oh god, that thumbnail still, the one on the left still has so much power, but then he took it and even made it better when he did the final drawing.
And the thing is, that final drawing is like basically another post-it, according to Neil.
Right.
Like because these are presented actual size
Mm.
in the book, and the size of this image was about the size of a post-it. That
Well, that's
beautiful
why we call
right
them
image.
thumbnails because they're no
Yeah.
bigger than a thumbnail.
And this is from a sketchbook called the Neal Adams The Sketchbook. It's published by Vanguard. I hope to have them sell a few books. Arlen Schumer is the one who compiled all the stuff, and
Mm.
he got this in there, and it was just like that. This is a close up in the book. That left side is a script page from Continuity Studios from some ad he was drawing or whatever, and he just got an idea of the enmity of the pose. So he did the
Oh,
drawing on the left really tiny on a script for another thing, just to make sure he got the idea down. And
right.
then later he tightened that up, maybe even on a light box, but not really, because he could do this all day. He tightened that up into the thing on the right, and
Hmm.
that's what he presented, I guess, to editorial, and then he could obviously finish the whole piece, which he
Right.
probably blew this up. The one on the right, he probably blew that up because he was definitely known for blowing stuff up.
Oh yeah. I mean, I used to do you do all your stuff small because it's faster and you can kind of feel it more, and it's just easier to do. And then the back in the day, the photocopy machine was your best friend.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, it's for and also just keeping that amount of energy. I'm gonna go through here and select another couple sketchy sketches before we kind of get into it because I like the power of him just sketching. Like even like convention sketches like this, which aren't sketches necessarily, they're finished
Mm.
drawings, but like
Oh
this
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
This
that's got some juice.
it's got some juice, right? There's
Yeah.
just something to Batman's you know what he does, you know what I think Neil might be the best at of all time is that compression of the sternum, not the sternum, the torso.
Yeah. He had a way to make characters coil and explode that I think is very difficult. Like you have to have such a deep understanding of anatomy and human structure to where you can fuck with it in a way, right? So you
Mhm.
can squash and animate it and really kind of push it and have it still be structurally correct and believable, but in a pose that only Batman could be in. Like there's just no way. Like I can't get my knee that close.
Well, but it's possible. The
Yeah.
beauty, I think the biggest word about Neil Adams is like a lot of the stuff seems possible, even though
Mm.
it is cartooning. Like, and this isn't some super great example, but I'm still staying on this sort of sketchy vibe. I love this drawing, dude.
Oh yeah.
I love this drawing. To me, honestly, if I bought a comic book and that was a panel,
Hmm.
I take it.
Yeah.
I definitely take it. Obviously, I take it. It's Neil Adams, but at the same time, this level of detail, like this is what you need. And maybe I'm just kind of trying to put a salve on the fact that I hate finishing drawings. Like I love the sketch power.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much of it goes away when you finish it.
That's one of the things I have struggled with. One of the reasons I've been doing a book for a long time, and I'm actually doing the first issue. The first couple of issues are going to be fully inked, and I've learned how to ink, and I'm classically inking them. It's not great, but the struggle I've had is to keep the life of the my rough in the finished drawing, and it's always a challenge. Like, look how fast those lines are. You can just see he's scribbling at the
Mm-hmm.
bottom. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. So much energy.
Well, one thing I was going to ask you, because I definitely, obviously, we're here to praise the great Neil Adams, but I love to talk to you about art in general and
Mm.
about your process too. Do you, how are you inking? Are you doing straight up the inkwell dipping? You doing
Oh,
kuretake,
I've
brush
got
pins? What you doing?
I don't dip in ink, but I have very good. I have one of these guys. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's It's a Japanese brush. It's got a really great brush head, and it
The
has
Pentel pocket brush pen?
yeah, and it
Okay.
has so it's got the refillable ink, and
Mhm.
then microns and any kind of India ink pen I can find that's got a good line. Like it has to have a good line. It has to have some bounce, and it has to be easy. Like it's got to flow. So microns are great, but they dry out fast. So it's
Yeah.
um and I've never I tried inking with the crow quill and the brush for a while. It's too messy for me. I just never got the hang of it. It's a whole nother skill set.
Dude, I absolutely hear you, and I
Yeah.
feel your pain on a lot lower
Right,
level, obviously.
right. I mean,
But
honestly, Ed, I grew up drawing with a ballpoint pen, like cheap as shit, easy, it, n- like not made for camera ready. Like I never thought I was going to be a finished artist. I always ever just wanted to be a penciler. I just wanted to tell the story and do that side of it. The idea of finishing a drawing with ink and putting in texture and gray and was never my jam.
well, I mean, and speaking of which, when I'm going to show another array of sketch to final, and I
Mhm.
think this image impacted both of us pretty hard
Mm.
whenever we saw it at whatever age.
Oh
And
yeah,
that is this bad boy right here. Now on the left is from that same sketchbook, published by Vanguard, I guess,
right.
compiled by Arlen Schumer, the Neal Adams sketchbook. On the left is obviously the rough drawing, and just look how much he retained
Yeah.
in the right drawing. Matter of fact, let me for the people watching at home, I'm gonna get this goddamn greatest part overlay off of here real quick so I could see
Yep.
this hand. It's just the poetry in the hand
Yeah.
is fantastic.
It's got so his stuff always had so much. Not only is everything have incredible structure, but every all his figures move, right?
Yeah.
They're always completely dynamic, even if they're just standing there.
And that the look, I mean, obviously we're looking, but look at that leg, man. There are
Yeah.
dudes who've been drawing comics for 10 years that can't do that leg.
I tell you what, I struggle with that angle of the knee every time I draw it.
Cuz
Try and make
cuz
it just looks weird when I draw it.
well, you know what's funny? It's like you learn the structure of the knee, and
Mhm.
we as superhero artists tend to draw little skinny knees,
Mhm.
like that section is to make the calves pop and the quads pop, so you make the knees really skinny.
Exactly. And also, like I fudged the patella because I've never quite sure like how
Mhm.
does this tendon work? How does this thing work? I just have a very loose idea of how it floats in there.
Yeah, and floating is a great descriptor for it because it
Mhm.
just floats around in there. So it's like, and it moves
Yeah.
even when healthy and fine, it moves around. I think it's just one of the hardest tasks. And again, we got the torso
Mhm.
jazz.
Oh yeah.
And never mind the left arm, foreshortening. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And just think about like just the tilt of the slight tilt of the shoulders, and how he's putting his hand with his leg to kind of push up and get out and pull himself on the dock thing. Just to even think of this pose, the
Right. Well, I
that
mean, we're not even
that
going to
was the
get
thing.
into. I mean, we can get into it if you want, but like, so there's the dynamic pose, right? There's the action of the pose, but then also the way that his weight is completely balanced and transferred. You can see where his weight is. He has
Mm.
mass,
Hmm.
and and all of that being done, and still he's using that figure to guide your eye into the page. He
Yeah.
sucks you like his perspective and his composition draws you right in, so you are right there. Um, the minute you pick that book up and open that cover,
Yep, absolutely, man. And it's taking you towards where the story goes, which is,
Mhm.
out to the right, as you said. The other thing I like about his jazz is even let's look at a page real quick. An actual like comic page, like not a splash page, but a
Oh
page.
yeah, this one. That oh my god, this is one of the ones that I studied when I was a kid, trying to figure out how do you make. This is how you make these unbelievable things believable.
Yeah. And just even when you just look at the breaking it down,
Mhm.
okay, you put a face real big, close up, and then you got Captain America's face about the right size and his hand at about the right angle to kind of
Mhm.
make the dude go into, make the Ant-Man go in Vision's mouth to repair him or whatever. And then you see that it's just, you could think this way, you could do it, but like executing
Right.
that, executing it would be a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the things that Neil, I think, brought to I mean, there are other guys who had vision and picked cool angles. Lou Fine was amazing. Hal Foster was
Hmm.
amazing. Like the Alex Raymond was amazing. Their figure, all these guys were
Or like
geniuses.
Steranko, even,
Strike
people like
100%,
that.
right? But there's something about the way Neil did it. It was just no. I had never seen anything like it before.
I mean, just I think the litheness of
Mhm.
his figures, if that's even a freaking word. I want to show you, talk about some of Tarzan jazz. Check this out. I don't want to give this short shrift. I just want to say, look at this hatching on his cheek, man.
Oh yeah,
Like, get out of here with that. And Neil was one of those dudes. Larry Hama tells stories about like he would go up to Larry Hama while he was drawing and be like, uh oh, so you're settling. I
yeah.
got you.
I read that story. I
You
read that
know,
Larry story. It's like,
it
oh,
just,
you're scared of doing it the other way.
yeah, and he'd come up and casually tell somebody at Continuity Studios, there's like what 27 planes of the nose.
Mhm.
So if you're just kind of doing it as a couple of dark nostril lines and a
Right.
line for the bridge, you're kind of not drawing a nose. You're drawing. I learned this word. Iconographically.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're
You
drawing the
know,
symbol of a nose.
Yes, some
Right.
iconographically, symbolically. But
Right.
when you look at Neil, I think he was always trying to figure out, and to go back to some sketches real quick. Check this shit out, yo.
Oh yeah.
Look at this.
One of the things, I can hear it in your voice, when you really sit down and study your Neil, it gets annoying fast.
You're totally right, because I have made studies of the right picture. The
Uh-huh.
left picture, that I love it, but that right picture of Superman,
Yeah.
from how he's articulating the hair, right?
Mhm.
His little spit curl, to how he's articulating the effort in his face, because I believe this is from Muhammad Ali versus Superman, where he's like probably flying through an alien armada or doing something Herculean. So he's
Right.
actually got super strain on his face, even though he's Superman. So
Mhm.
the gritted teeth are, I mean, everybody, not to diss anybody, but people who really can't draw can draw gritted teeth on people, but
It's one of the
that's a
first things you
mouth.
learn. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's
but
with
this is a
the lip
mouth.
curling. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just fantastic, man. I mean, to go to another one, check this out. Neil Adams mouths. We got to talk about it, bro. We
Yeah.
have to talk about it. Neil Adams drew mouths. I, look at this mouth on Batman.
Right.
Look at that mouth. It
Well,
intones.
he never skimps. Like he gives you what you need. There's never too much. He never overworks stuff, though he labors stuff quite a bit. But like he gives you, like, that's a real, those are real lips. Like Batman is making it, you can read the expression. He gives you everything that you need that Batman would be like if Batman were real. So you don't have to
Mhm.
imagine it. It's right there.
No, absolutely. And you said something about like the Tarzan work.
Oh
This is
god, yeah.
always one of my favorite things, and obviously the right is a detail from the actual plate of the book or whatever,
Mhm.
and the left is, I think, Neil kind of recreating that pose for a
Right.
later commission type of thing or something like that, because as you can see, it's like it's rendered in line, whereas he was able to use like colors. And I think somebody said he used Doc Martin dyes to do covers. I'm not sure. I'm not, no,
That sounds right. I think that was the standard tool of the time.
hmm but it's just funny to use them for like covers, though, for like a book, like for books that aren't comics. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I think he was probably maybe taking a comic book technique into book illustration, but obviously, illustration at that time was just like, it's probably as it is right now. A lot of people who draw comics draw storyboards, animation, ads. So, the style of the day and the tools of the day, that's what he
Right.
used. But this is different from like Frazetta painting, is what I'm saying.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, he definitely there's a lot of ink in there in a way, and I
Hmm.
do believe it is Doc Martens. But either way, it's not oils or acrylics. It's at best it might be watercolors or gouache, but or yeah, I'm pretty sure that is Doc Martens. Yeah, you could make it. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff from this era. They could really make those tools sing in a way that I've never understood.
Well, I mean, and that's saying something. One of the things that I always liked about Neil, let's look at a couple of oh, you know what? I gotta show this Superman cover because I just love it.
Mm-hmm. That
And
one's beautiful.
his use of photostats
Yeah.
at the time that maybe even like Kirby was using photostats too, yeah, sometimes. And I'm not saying this pejoratively at all. I know a lot of amateur artists are just like, me, you should draw every building. Like
Nope, you should not. I
I
mean, you
have
shouldn't.
you shouldn't, even when you're and
Yeah.
it's rare that it's actually effective to make the drawing better. I would say um sometimes when Frank Quitely does it and he's using it the way that Otomo would use it.
Hmm.
Otomo drawing every window in a building does something. It works on some level to ground it some kind of way, and it,
Right.
it makes some kind of sense. But 9 out of 10 times in regular comic art these days, I know you just Google sketched up some shit and traced it off anyway. So like, I
Right.
don't need to see all these goddamn windows, man. I need some chiaroscuro. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
need something.
It
Jesus.
it all depends on what the goal is. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm going to butcher the quote, but wasn't it Wally Wood who said it like, don't draw something if you can trace it. Don't trace it if you can copy or paste it. Right. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
listen, as you know, right, drawing takes time, and it's difficult to get it just right. And if you can save, and that if you have a perfect background building like that, like background, and it fits the Superman drawing, then it makes it all use it. Kirby used photo stats all the time and it made them look great.
Yeah, I think I might have in here the best photostat of all time.
Mm,
That one where he used it in a Batman comic book. I'm trying to find it. But yeah, he used a dope ass photostat in a Batman comic book, and it was pretty sick.
oh,
Like
look at
right here. The background of the like bottom left
mhm,
panel is a photo set, which is so weird because I mean when I look at it, it isn't. I don't know that that's necessarily in proper perspective, but it
right,
really doesn't matter. It's
right,
atmospheric. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Uh, and look at that lighting on Batman's face. Like how,
Ah, love
like
that cross
Jeff.
hatching.
Okay, let's say
Yeah.
you get that, and they say Jeff. Neil Adams asked you to ink this.
Ugh.
How do you even how do you even approach it?
I wouldn't. I would. My lines are not subtle enough to deal with that. I would scribble it. I would I would just scribble it and hope for the best. But that's I just it's so masterful because it looks so loose and it looks chaotic, but every line is exactly where it's supposed to be.
Well, I mean, the whole thing about like I think digital drawing messed me up a little bit
Mm,
because now I kind of see how much folly there is in trying to make value with line. If you
mm,
dig what I'm saying. Like just taking a bunch of lines and
right,
making that the gray of the thing and then making some slightly less spaced out lines and make that the lighter gray and all that kind of jazz. Uh, and when you're digitally drawing, you just feel the need to kind of smear and paint and do some stuff and to create the
right.
values that way rather than trying to rely on line because it looks goofy compared, which is why I think these days there's very few people that I really super enjoy their coloring jobs on new modern comics. 'Cause I feel like
Mm,
there's a lot of sculpting where maybe the line should be doing stuff
right,
or like covering up the line to make these sculpted. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's not Laura Martin. You know what I mean? Or
right. Yeah, she's a genius. Well, one of the things, and Dan talks about this quite a bit, and it's something that I'm learning in my inking process, but also just whenever you're doing any kind of drawing, the lines. are, I mean, I tend to be much more of a structural artist and animation, kind of like the contour drawing outline artist. That's really where
Hmm.
my training is at. But every line is just is supposed to delineate how light and shadow work. And so that's all the lines really are, is like if light is coming from over here, it's causing the shadow, which is in essence your line. So the way back in the day when comics were more predominantly black and white, but also the inks were had carried more weight than the color, because color does so much more of the heavy lifting now, right? Back in
Hmm.
the day, you just had the little blue for Batman, and so you
Hmm.
needed to show what the light was doing to show how the world was working with your line weights, and with your inkings and your wash. That's how you got depth and and shape, right? And so these
Hmm.
guys had to use those tools because the printing was so much crappier, right? There
Hmm.
was and the coloring was so much simpler, right? They had to do
Hmm.
everything they needed to do with just cross hatching and zipatone and all their little tricks and dry brush. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, yeah, you know what though? I think that's my first sign of me getting like hella old, because I just really enjoy flat color over that folly of line making value.
Right.
I
I
think
I
that's
mean,
what
I like it
looks the
too.
best to me. It looks
I
the best to me for comics.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's great. I mean, I love great color, and I've seen some amazing work. But I do think that in the end, a comic book, the story should always be king, and and the black and white conveys the action and the emotion, and the color should enhance all of that. I think it's easy to get lost in the bells and whistles of everything. So I think the better your black and white drawing is, the simpler your color, the more direct your color, I think the smoother the story is.
Well, to that effect, I have pulled up a picture of him drawing, I think, Eerie magazine.
Hmm.
It's a story about a guy who goes down into a cave, and the cave goes to a land beyond time, and
Oh, cool.
people from different eras. This guy is, I think, maybe a 50s guy, and
Mm.
he gets trapped in there. This 1800s lady who's like, "Oh, my merry fellow, please join me in fellowship as we run from the pterodactyl that's here too." You know what I mean? So it's like
Right,
milkmaids, dudes from the 50s, atomic robots from the future, all type of
right.
stuff, all mixed up in this, and cavemen, all mixed up in this land after time. And the top left panel, you had drawn a thing. I'm sorry I didn't download that and throw it in here, but
That's
you had
okay.
drawn the form. See, he's making all that with line. I
Right.
mean, he's making, but without closing his line. He's
He's
doing a bunch of
drawn
hatching.
Yeah, he's drawn all the inside effect, and since he's in the desert and he's staring up at the sun, he's given the sense of heat, and
Hmm.
he's washed out the detail like he's in the bright sun by not putting a holding line on. He didn't have a holding line. So if you look at that drawing, like it's just the inside details. There's no actual holding line for those shapes because the sun blurred it out. And it really gives you the sense of being in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and that's Penn. That's
Yeah,
him
that's
with
all
a
pen.
pen
Yeah.
handling his business. And then
Right.
I just love this fucking pterodactyl,
Oh yeah.
pterodon, whatever, flying towards this guy. Just the danger that you're in if if a dinosaur is flying at you.
Yeah.
And the previous panel, there's a little dry brush or something that denotes the
The shadow.
shadow of the
Yeah.
beast coming over him.
Yeah, you're boned.
I mean, come on, man. I think this guy's got like a 38. That 38 gets a real workout in that story.
Yeah, it's a great story. Gotta look at those mountains too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's just I do want to comment on the fact that like the swirls, also the swirl of line and the hatching or whatever the hell's making those mountains, it
Mhm,
denotes that they're far away because they're a
mhm.
little bit more broken up than the central than the leftmost figure than the
Right,
guy.
they blur out. Yeah.
I just see, and that's, I'm telling you, the more I draw digitally, the less of those skills that I get. So I have to keep going back and forth, which
Right.
it's like a duh statement, but it's like a concentrated effort thing you have to do too.
Well, I mean, it's the materials inform the medium, right? Like the
Hmm.
kind of paper they were using, the kind of printing process they had back then, the how stuff like a lot of times stuff would be printed black and white. So that was just how you saw it. So I definitely think the using the computer is great, but you're not getting the analog meat and potatoes kind of skill set anymore because
Mm,
it's just not going for the same thing. You're not trying to accomplish the same idea with your drawing, right? Because you can also too being able to push in and out
hmm.
to an ultimate detail. Like I have to really watch that when I'm doing my work because I'll go nuts and put too much detail in something that's irrelevant, whereas that
Yep.
should be done with just a shape or it should be done with some cross hatching.
And some design. We're gonna
Hmm.
get into some design stuff in this back half of the thing here, but let's kind of start here with his work on and also Eerie magazine.
That's a
Again,
great story.
you had drawn an arrow going up from the left of the upper leftmost panel up to
Right.
the right to denote a diagonal.
Yeah, that just shows that one of the things that Neil does that I studied and try and do in my own drawing, and I think it's important as a comic book artist because you're picking static images and you're layering them together to create a sense of movement and a bigger picture. And one of the ways you do that is that you have people consistently be in an imaginary geography, right? So
Hmm.
that shooter is always up and to the right. That's where he exists in that space. And so he's always up there. So whenever Neil shows him, even if we are only seeing part of him or someone even addressing where he is, he's always in that same mental space. So
Mm.
we know exactly what's going on. As the reader, we have all the information we need, but he never wastes time with an establishing shot of him up there and then someone down below. You just don't need it.
Yeah, and you talk about geography. I love how just using a lot of cartoonists lose track of people, period. They just kind of just don't really care about the
Right.
geography of what's happening. It's just like this next punch and this next punch and this next punch. Just worry about that.
Mhm.
But here we see him raining these bullets down on high, and as you're stating, the bullets are for the most part coming up from the right down to the left. So they're blasting through these different people. They blast this lady, then there's a lady that gets blasted. Then a guy comes to check on this lady that got blasted, and he gets blasted.
Right.
And I do believe this is the next. So, oh damn it. On the next page, shit. On the next page, shit, I lost it. But anyway, on the next page, he's laying over her.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's all messed up. Yeah, I think this is it, but these are kind of little. But yeah, it's just so it's keeping track of everybody
Hmm.
and making sure. And again, you see on the bottom panel of this right here, the cop is, as you stated, shooting up and to the right.
Yeah. So we know who he's shooting at. We don't have to see the guy in his sights. We know exactly what's happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And showing again, going back to the thing of sketch to actual completion, I do want to show a couple of things. We showed that before. A couple of things where he is it's a sketch, and then it's completion, and you're just like, how did you even think like that
Mm,
to like to complete that? Because I think it seems to me that like even the energy, like how do you initially sketch? Like what's in your mind when you're
mm.
initially sketching?
Well, one of the things that I try and do is think about. Oh, that's a great shot. Look at that. You try and think about what the goal is. And so you have a purpose in mind when you're sketching. Sometimes you're just sketching to see what happens, and then your subconscious does some work, and that's wonderful when that happens, when the muse strikes. But generally, I have a goal in mind, a space I need to fill, and so I try and think of like what is the image that has to be seen here. It looks like Adam Strange zapping everybody, and so they're
Hmm.
all full figure, and they're smaller, but I need to use a certain amount of the space on the page to show every figure, and that's how do I compose that and then still leave room for like now I have to compose the Adam Strange figure in such a way that is interesting and dynamic, but also kind of fits in this weird little angle that I've left myself. So it's always
Yeah.
about doing you know, like the it's once you make those initial once you have your parameters like A must be B to equal C, then stuff starts to fall into place. But that's always the hard part because that shot could have he didn't need to show the full figures of everybody. He could have
Mm-hmm.
easily just done faces with someone like would have been way easier, but he picked a really tough shot.
Yeah, I think that in that you say that, and that is one of the hallmarks of Neil Adams, I
Of
think, because
always
like,
picking a tough shot, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he
because like
always picked the hardest possible shot.
he's trying to compose this thing where he's blasting down to the left, and they're inside his beam, and this
Yeah,
is the actual cover. You
right.
can see the entirety of the image and how it. Because that's another thing I'd like to maybe ask you some of the inside baseball if you've done covers before.
Uh-huh.
So he was drawing this, and even when you see as you saw in the sketches, he was kind
Right.
of writing in where the type would be and stuff
Yep.
like that. Is that a major? How do you get your mind around? Okay, I have to leave this space and not cramping yourself
Well,
because
I mean,
of
that's the
that.
trick of composition. Well, so not only if you look at so he's got the Justice League logo and the DC and the all the balloons and all the stuff that's up top that needs to be read because back in the day, if you remember, all comics were in racks in the turns.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't necessarily see what the cover what the art was. You saw the logo stood on top. And
Mm-hmm.
so that had to be completely visible, right? So you could a lot of I mean you eventually were able to put some drawings up into the logo and what, but it was kind of sacrosanct. So
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty weird to break a logo. So the space, so that's automatically 1/3 of the cover gone for any kind of compositional solution you might have. And then don't
Mm-hmm.
forget like the UPC box at the bottom there, right? He had to work around that too. So he composed that in, and then the writing and the crossing out, and all that stuff. Like you have to have all that stuff in space before you even start drawing. So it almost makes it easy. The less choice you have, the almost it's almost easier because you run out of options.
Huh. Yeah, I could kind of see
Yeah.
that. Let's look at another iconic cover. We got this one here.
Right. But see,
Now,
here he is breaking a little bit of the Batman, right?
mm-hmm.
With the Joker and the Bat. Once again, it's the full. He gave you everything you wanted. You've got a full figure of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
You have also a full figure of the Joker, but in a weird way, and some city stuff. And he like posed in the all the word balloons and everything. It's one of those things that uh, it's it's so hard to do a good cover because
Mm-hmm.
the it's you get into you have your tricks and you have the things that you know work and those get boring fast. So he always made an interesting cover. He always found a unique solution to covers.
Well, I think and this one has so much going on for people. Like, okay, first of all, we start with the Dutch angle, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because stuff is a little off. That's a big one. I kind of tend to only draw in Dutch angles. Like last time I drew a flat horizon line in one of
Right.
my drawings that I'm doing for fun was like never. I don't do it anymore. It's
Right,
always
right,
slanted some kind of way, and then that's my own crutch. But
right.
but in this, it's used actually effectively and smartly,
Yeah.
right? And then you got, okay, the anatomy of like just me personally as a layman and as an amateur artist, I'm just looking at how hard it is to draw those arms in perspective, grabbing that card. And the card, think about this logically,
Mhm.
that card is way too big,
Oh yeah,
but it
and also
doesn't
the cape comes off
matter.
of the card, and the cape flows down around,
Hmm.
right?
Well, yeah,
Um,
I'm just saying, like even for the proper perspective of how him putting his arms out, that
oh yeah,
playing card is way too big.
right.
But to do it at the proper scale would fuck the whole thing up. So
Yeah.
we get it as close as possible, as reasonable. These
Mhm.
largely oversized cards that Batman is on or whatever. He's
Right.
pinned to it with those little shits. Uh, uh, Joe
Right, right.
Joker is coming. Joker is superseding the Batman logo because this is the first time he's been in comics in like 10 years or
Right.
something. You know what I mean? So even if you were a fan and you're looking at that logo, you see little green hair and you go, the fucking Joker's back. And then you peel back those
Exactly.
other comics, throw them on the fucking ground,
Right.
and you look at this one and you go, the Joker's back. And he's
Yeah.
got Batman where he needs him. And again, the city, this is what I'm trying to tell myself a lot, Jeff, when I'm like making my compositions and I'm trying to like draw my comics.
Mhm.
Okay, you can do a composition that shows 1,000,000,000 fucking buildings,
Mhm.
or you could do a composition that throws a nice little ring of them around the bottom here. You see, a nice
Right.
little ring of buildings, because the fucking buildings in any comic book or any drawing, they're there to set a scene,
They're also
but
there for
nine
this. They're just suggestions.
they're suggestions and they're
Yeah.
graphic objects.
Yeah.
They're graphic objects that frame this titanic, mythic battle you're trying to
Right.
draw.
Unless
And
you're
you,
just going in, unless you're going into a specific building that has to have a very clear architectural design to it, it's
right,
just a building.
right,
And they it's like a tree. It's just a tree. We all see it unless it has to be something specific. It's better for your mind not to lock onto anything in particular because it's just a building, right? If you see a tree that's an amazingly drawn tree that's got a bunch of character, well, then your mind looks at the tree, not
right.
at at Conan, let's say, or at Batman, let's say. You know who was really great? I know I might be skipping ahead, but I wanted to. One of the things like we're talking about Neil, and he's great, and I think that we could talk about the specificity of what makes him great in every one of his drawings. But I think even more important than his own personal greatness is how much he inspired all the artists after him. Like
Oh yeah.
like when you talk about those buildings remind me of Alan Davis buildings, who is a huge Neal Adams
Mm-hmm.
fan. And he
Mm-hmm.
definitely understood that sometimes a butterstick building is fine.
Well, like you look at your boy Sienkiewicz, right?
Oh yeah.
Like Sienkiewicz, that I wish I pulled it, but like that Moon Knight where he's like he's on fire and he's standing above buildings that are on fire,
Hmm.
and he's like and
Right.
he's as big as buildings and stuff. That's Neil through and through, from
100%.
how it's framed and everything. But you said, talking about his power as a cover artist, I just want to look at some weird covers. Can we look at some
Of,
funky ones,
of course.
like
Oh,
this motherfucker
brutal.
right here?
Oh man. He did the best. I mean, I don't know if you got it or not, but he did a great Billy Jack cover of a kick. And like
Oh, I
his
don't have that one, but because I wanted to give I wanted to give Bruce Lee more props than Billy Jack, frankly, but but yes.
understandable. Right, right. Yeah, but look at that one. So here's the thing that I always love about Neil's work, and a lot of these artists at the time who had to draw believable, realistic stuff, especially stuff based on film or TV, right? They didn't
Hmm.
have videotapes, right? They maybe
Yeah.
had stills from the movie, or they maybe had a magazine of the movie. They'd have to, and also you couldn't just go see the movie whenever you wanted to. You had to see it, and that was
Yeah.
it, right? You didn't have it on DVD. You weren't able to take stills from it or screen capture this or any of that stuff. So he drew that from
Hmm.
memory.
I mean, and even if he did get certain promotional materials, he probably
Right.
got two angles of Bruce Lee's face. He
Yeah.
probably, what I mean. There's the promotional. I remember, gosh, I think it was might have been cartoonist kayfabe basically saying that the dudes who drew, I think it was Rick Veitch and fuck, I'm blanking on his name, but like just Titanic comic artist did the comic adaptation of 1944 or
Mm.
1941, that Steven Spielberg movie. They
Was
wouldn't
that
release
wasn't
footage to
John
him.
Buscema, was it?
No, but
No.
I think Rick Veitch and damn, somebody I'm blanking on, Stephen
Okay.
Bissett, I think.
All right.
The classic Swamp Thing team. I think that they did it like in some absurdly short amount of time, with literally having sat down and went to go see the movie one time, and in a screening room where they wouldn't let it wasn't even in an audience or anything. They had to see the movie one time, take a
Right.
bunch of notes, take a bunch of sketches, and go off in the woods and do the whole adaptation.
That's
So you're
crazy.
right. Those days were fucking barbaric.
It's
Honestly.
yeah, exactly. Barbaric is it was uncivilized. There's this perfect way to describe it. I just remember even getting trying to do Star Wars stuff back in the day. The first time I did a Star Wars book, I had seen Star Wars and I'd loved Star Wars and I had some Star Wars comics and toys and whatnot, but like I didn't have, a million pictures of Han Solo or Chewbacca. I mean, you just didn't have that stuff. You just had to
Hmm.
draw it as best you could, having seen it one or two. I mean, I've seen Star Wars a million times, but like having But not being able to trace the Millennium Falcon, not being able to figure any,
Dude,
oh
get
yeah,
out of here.
it was so hard. It's so much. It's still hard to get everything right, and standards are so much higher. Like you could fudge stuff a lot more back in the day. Um,
Yeah, I love Chaikin Star Wars.
oh yeah,
You know what I mean? It's just
Simonson
like,
Star Wars, right? Those
yeah,
guys all drew a ton of that shit from memory.
dude, and I love stuff like this too from Neil.
Oh yeah,
It's I think these are, and if you look close, that guy is hella big.
yeah,
That Conan is throwing, that's like a giant that
he's huge.
that Conan is throwing into the abyss, and it's got that weird effect of like that Kubla, I don't know, some kind of weird wizard
Hmm.
monster
Right.
guy in the back coming out made of fire. He's coming out of a pyre that's being fought around by some dudes, and then over at a cliff, I guess.
I loved his Conan. So
Conan is it.
good.
You know what? Let's talk about this. Okay. I know that John Buscema's Conan is Conan.
Yes.
You can't take that away,
No.
period.
I'll
And
fight.
for
I'll
my
fight you.
yeah, and for my money, I like the Zuniga fine. I like
Mhm.
Chan a little less.
Mm,
Uh I like Alcala. And I know Big John didn't like Alcala,
yeah.
but Alcala threw some fucking textures down
Yeah. I love the Akala
on
stuff.
come on,
Yeah.
man. He threw some those stone textures when like Conan would swim out of a lake to a tomb of wet stone,
Yeah.
and you would see wet stone, but just with ink.
No, Akala was
Just
genius.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff, man. Let's look at some iconic jazz, and let's look at this cover, and then we'll go to one of the most iconic Batman images ever, because I want to kind of get your take on the thought process beyond some of this stuff.
Mm,
This is another cover. It's classic. It's Batman versus Man Bat, and the first thing that strikes me is the weird kayfabe of the fucking lights of the city
mhm.
lighting their shins and their
Right.
under places like they are these big titans, like they're literal kaiju, but at the
Right.
same time the quality of the drawing and something about it lets you know that in this issue Batman did not become a billion stories tall, nor did
Right.
Man
You
Bat.
know that is a symbolic drawing,
Yeah,
but it's a
like how do
symbolic
you though,
drawing
how do you
rendered
know it?
well because they're not squashing the city, and they're coming
Hmm.
and they're clearly fighting for the city, and the city
Hmm.
is represented in the battle, and it's the moon. It's a full moon, which I've always loved. And then it's like and the lighting is it's coming up from the city, like they're being lit by all the fire and the lights below, but you know it's not that they're not really giants just because that's not that kind of book, right? So you have the
Hmm.
parameters in your mind, like, oh, this
Hmm.
is Batman and Man Bat fighting over Gotham. That's it, right? Like, um,
Hmm.
and he was so like, oh, just look at the cape, how the cape and the wings point towards the moon, which is right behind Man. So everything is falling over that way, and it's once again
Hmm.
it's Dutched, so
Yeah.
the weight is falling that way. And Batman is going left to right. The hero's moving left to right, but he's being stopped by this character who is not necessarily going right to left, is coming more towards us, right? So he's not really the opposer necessarily. They're just in
Hmm.
conflict. It's really good storytelling, which is one
I
of the
mean,
reasons that
yeah.
that people bought this book, because you automatically have a reaction to it. And I think that's one of the things that Neil did so well, is he captured the emotion of not just the drawing, but the story behind the drawing.
And let's look at how long he's been doing that, because when you look
Oh
at
yeah,
this is an early Superman cover of his.
yeah,
And it's got Superman, and like there's a guy who's like about to get his shit rocked by Superman. And Superman basically is doing that kind of I see in the drawing Neil was not afraid to use like those lines to
right. To show his fist is vibrating a little bit.
yeah, like he's
Yeah,
like the tremulous nature of I'm about to
yeah,
cave your shit in, son. But when you
yeah.
look at the drawing, the guy is looking Superman right in his eye, and he's just like, "Bro, you can't fuck with me. You may kill me, but you
Right.
cannot defeat me." And you get that without even reading the words.
Yeah.
of each of the body language. The fact that he's looking at his expression, like Superman is chagrined, and this guy is triumphant, even though he's about to get his shit rocked. You see
Hmm.
that from the drawing.
Yeah.
I just think stuff like that is like really, really powerful, and we can't forget some of the greatest covers. Dude, look at this, look, man. Okay, can you
Oh
talk to me
yeah.
about double lighting? Is this double lighting?
He's being lit from behind
Mm-hmm.
with reflected light coming around both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
And
that you
I
have the light bouncing. So you have a lot. He's bouncing a lot of light, right? So
mm-hmm.
you like he's being lit from clearly being lit from behind, but like there's enough coming around to bounce on both sides of his face, and there's a little bit of light bouncing off of his chest on his right side into his right arm, so you get the shape of that right hand, and then but the heavier black who's from his shoulder and his chest coming down onto his leg, but he cheats it too because he wants you to see the cape detail, and if he didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that light bouncing off of his chest, that
Mm.
cape would be all black. So
Yeah.
he uses the light to show you the cool stuff and to give that character just a ton of dimension.
Yeah, okay. And okay, on the like I just found this one. It's not a seminal image from my youth or anything,
Mhm.
but I just love this image
Oh yeah, that's a
because
great
of
one.
all the storytelling that's happening. Like, okay, in this comic, Batman has become some kind of giant man bat. He is
Right,
attacking he is
right.
attacking Superman, and shit is really fucked up. And I mean, you look how low it is in the page. It's obviously taking he's using every piece of real estate to sell this conflict and still
Mhm.
have space for all of that. What I don't know what you call it, indicia, whatever, all that shit up atop.
Right. Well, what's really important is the faces, Superman being
Mm.
choked, and the
Hmm.
Superman always the symbols. Always make sure you got the chest in there, right? You
Yeah,
got to have the symbols, and you
yeah.
see the Batman symbol, and all the all that stuff on top, all that that had to be visible from the newsstands. But then then all the capes, all the lines of the cape flow back in towards the choke, right? All the
Hmm.
wings and the elbows and everything frame the choke, so your eye is drawn right to it.
Huh.
And the ear, I mean, even his ears, Batman pointing down into Superman's face, all the lines going right into
Wow.
Superman's face, and even the claws coming back towards Superman. Yeah, because what's important, like we don't need to see his legs. Like
Yeah.
that's not important. That's not
Hmm.
the story.
Hmm. And we don't need a background either. Like with
No.
all that writing up top, they're not going to be able to read your buildings that you drew back there anyway. And why
And
would you even give a definitive location for a fight this titanic, right?
right. Yeah, it's not important. It's not part of the story. And the other thing that's really upset you, Ed, I bet
Well,
that took him like 2 or 3 hours. I mean, I know he did, he didn't spend more than a day on it. They never spent more than a day on anything. They were
well, I mean,
fast. They did this shit in a
dude.
hurry,
Well, I mean, if I had to draw 3 panels of Ben Casey a day for 4 years or
right?
whatever, I bet I could draw Batman wrestling a guy pretty quickly
Well, I
too.
mean, that's that early strip stuff that he did when he was young before he broke into like regular comics. Like that kind of training makes
Hmm.
everything else. It's like when I'm not great at animation, right? I'm not a great board guy. I'm not a great prop guy or character guy. I'm good at any one of those things.
Hmm.
But the reason I can do all of them a little bit is because of comics. Like I learned how to do
Hmm.
like in animation, as you know, a character guy is a character guy and he specializes in just characters. Right. So he
Hmm.
is a super master expert at just that. But thanks to my training in comics, I can do a little bit of character. I can do a little bit of, prop design and storyboard and all that other stuff. But working on a daily strip like that must have honed his skills.
Well, especially given how much had to be referenced. I mean, can you imagine how freeing it must have been to fucking like just wing it on
Right.
certain things and like
Exactly. Right.
You got to draw Ben Casey and fucking Trapper John and goddamn
Right.
Rockford Files or whoever the hell
And it's
walking
got
down
to
the
be
street.
believable, and you gotta get this right. Yeah.
Dude, it's a fucking. And I just want to throw this one in here for shits and giggles before we start our gradual dismount here.
Oh God.
Motherfucking
Yeah.
Skate Man.
Yeah. His. I mean, you take a silly character and make that guy cool. Because not only, I mean, Skate Man, that pose is great, but the guy getting clocked, God, the leather
Yeah.
is amazingly drawn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Another
just
Dutch
and
angle.
another Dutch angle
Yeah.
and lots of space for the logo and stuff. His
Uh
you
huh.
see his hand isn't going way up over his head like he's rodeo riding or whatever to kind of
Right.
give the contrapposto to his other arm or whatever. Nah,
Right.
he's kind of just pushing off on the guy, arm well in reach, so it's not obscured by the skate in good perspective, leg in great perspective coming through. And
Right.
it's not just like that's not a karate kick. That's a
No, no,
street
that's a
fighting
really
kick.
great observation. It's not a karate kick. It's a skate kick.
Yes.
Right? Because it's a different. I mean, there's weight on the ends of the foot. You don't need like it's not. I don't think I noticed that before. Yeah, it's 100% not a karate kick.
Yeah. So it's like it's even down to that sort of granular storytelling with each of these things. Speaking of storytelling, let's take a look at one of these because I think people might say, "Ah, you're remiss. There's all these images. You're pouring over the beauty, but it's nothing without story." And even Neil would tell you that. And I'm
Yeah,
here
but
to tell
there's,
you
I
I
mean,
recognize it.
but there's so much story. Like even though these are singular images and
Yes,
covers,
that's true.
he is telling you a story with every figure, with every even the details of the guy's hat.
Yeah.
With the writing on the wall back there that's half lit by that light, and then the rings of light
Mhm.
going into the background. So you
Oh,
don't
those
even
rings of light. I didn't even peep that. But yeah, that gives so much depth.
yeah.
And he literally just drew a couple rings with
Well, because
it.
I mean, they're just coming from those. He shows you that they're coming from those little overhead lamps. But once you see the one, you don't need to see the other ones. You see the light.
Yes, yes, it's communication.
Yeah.
And just one of these uh
Oh yeah.
uh
This one, I remember seeing this when I was a kid and losing my mind.
okay, now break it to this here. I'm giving you the floor.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What is so great about this? Because I didn't see it as a you. I got to see this after seeing fucking Jim Lee and shit. Probably, you know what I
Oh,
mean. So it
right,
has this different. And I'm not saying, trust me, I'm not saying that there's any comparison in regards to telling stories and laying out shit. I'm
right,
sorry. So just tell me what this was like to see as somebody who would like pick up a Barry Windsor Smith, maybe almost doing Kirby and
right.
then pick this up. Like, how the fuck would that be?
Well, so generally speaking, one of the things that the comics were very trapped in the box, right?
Mm,
Like you
mhm,
had this many panels on a page, you move from left to right. Some guys broke that and changed that, but generally speaking, you tried to keep it almost as though you were watching a TV show or watching like within the movie. You'd still move from panel to panel and you tell the story, but
mhm,
page design, you didn't, especially a two-page spread like this. You most people Here's the thing: most people never had the time to play with stuff this way, right?
mm,
You had a lot of pages to get done, and there was a set way to generally do them. Um, and Kirby pretty much stayed. He did a ton of stuff with design, but like if you the majority of stuff is in the boxes, and so when someone like this, because it's still moving from left to right and down, and the way the
mhm,
figures are doing stuff, like, but adding all of adding the storytelling element of the TV screen following the arrow down from left to right that
mhm,
gives you a consistent. He's layering images in a way that I had never seen before. Like, not that other people weren't doing stuff in unique box shapes or panel shapes. People were definitely doing that. But I had never seen anyone tell the story in unique shapes and then on top of the story that we're seeing, layer another element of story, a meta story, if you will, on top of it in a way so seamlessly. Like, as
mm,
you're looking at what's happening with the X-Men fight, but then also you're getting the commentary from the guy on the screen. So you're actually getting several levels of storytelling happening at the same time, which which was mind blowing. Like the adding of that depth to what a story could be in comics, like how much comment, like he's adding story and commentary. It just takes it
Mm.
outside of a simple beat by beat idea and gives it this other dimension that maybe people were doing it before him. I am not a historian, but I personally had never seen anything like it, and it blew my mind. I'm like, oh shit, you don't, because all my training, like all the stuff I had been trying looking at, had always been in boxes.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Let's say, for just for argument's sake,
Hmm.
that he and I guess Roy Thomas it would be at this time, right? Would were work this out some kind of way.
Hmm.
How would you like even in the modern day scripting this? I guess you'd have to just say inset panel, inset panel, inset panel, or
Right.
whatever. But you know
Yeah.
what I mean. But it's just like, ah, man, and just as someone who's again trying to get their comics on recently, drawing the same person as their head tilts and does different stuff,
Right.
it's honestly, the repetitiveness of comics is the nightmare. And it's the only thing that's
Right.
so I think that is the main thing that keeps the amateur from the professional because there's so many people who can draw 2 angles, 3 angles, but okay, do it over and 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 over again. Do it 100 times an issue,
Right.
and it just starts to break you down. Their fucking heads start getting wonky. They start getting bigger eyebrows than they need to have. Just staying on model. All that talking to say, staying on model is difficult.
It's really difficult, especially if you're drawing the same guy who's just a boring newscaster and you're showing
Mm-hmm.
his emotional reaction to the stuff that he's saying happening in real time. Because those are all different faces. They're all still lit the same way, but
Mm-hmm.
they're different angles.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard to do and maintain it consistently all the way through that page. Yeah.
And looking at some other storytelling pages, I wanted to look at
Oh,
this one.
yeah.
This is to me insane because I love the top left of Batman jumping and his feet coming back to show you the perspective, and we
Mhm.
get to see that he's leaping down into like a gorge and it's full of water. Then a vertical Frank
Yeah.
Millerian uh uh panel, obviously well before, but you know what I'm saying, like the type of panels that Frank Miller would use to great effect.
Right.
Like it's a vertical panel to show the drop. If you use a vertical panel, it helps you to show the drop. But
Mhm.
even in this one, he's doing this yeoman's job of making water out of lines because drawing
Yeah.
water, as everybody knows, is like some hard shit.
Right. But also, I would like to take it. So that middle panel, when we talk about him telling the story and conveying the emotion of the story, beautifully drawn, but not necessarily what you would see, like the Batman, like you wouldn't see the Batman and Man Bat standing over the city. That's just the idea. The subtext is they're fighting over the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
That shot of when they land into the water, you also see them go under the water in the bubbles in the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would not see that shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in a movie, right? It would be really
But
hard to even
you
do
would
that shot.
pan down, like he's
Right.
creating this idea that you are going under the water with them, but
Yes.
he right, but that's a combination of shots.
You're
That's not just
right.
one shot, but he conveyed the motion effortlessly because if I were to have drawn that, I would have kept the I probably would have divided it into two panels, one where they hit the water and another where they go under. Or I would have clearly drawn the water like you were in the water and you would see that, you know how they do that kind of like where the water breaks, so you see what's on top and then you have the water line and then you see what's on
Yeah.
the bottom. I probably
Yeah.
would have gone for that. But once again, unnecessary. He does this whole sense of flow. He never stops at the water line. He doesn't draw it. It just goes down below.
Damn. See, and that's why you get paid the big bucks, Jeff, because I
Right,
never
because
would have
it's
thought of that.
because you don't think about it, right? As the person reading the book, you just go like you feel the splash, and then that's because we've all jumped into the water and had the bubbles and whatnot. So he's
Mm-hmm.
evoking that emotional memory of the splash and then coming to a stop.
Man, and I love the weight of Batman getting out of the water, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So Batman and see, and this is why I picked this page because okay, top left, great action.
Mhm.
That middle panel,
Right.
action that's almost invisible and just shows so much technique I didn't even notice it, even though I love that panel.
Right.
Third panel, he's got the weight of the world on him. He's soaked, and so is this guy, and he gets out of the water. He and this guy are equally soaked and seemingly equally tired and fucked up.
Right.
But when this guy turns around, Batman is not fucking there. And
Yeah.
and the opening it shows you that like it's
Right.
so open, where the fuck could he have even gone?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's
Right.
nothing for him to immediately hide behind, even like those uh Pete Holmes sketches or whatever.
Right.
It's just he's gone because
He's
he's
such a
that dope.
ninja. He's just a ninja. Where did he go? Did he go back in the water? Did he I mean, did he he's that's one of the things that's great is as the reader, then you're just left to marvel at how cool Batman must be, right? Like,
Yes.
he's like, "Oh, shit, I guess he's just so good."
Dude, and I just want to show this for a second. Okay, yeah, this shit to me is hilarious. It's from that same issue where the baby uh that has a few
The flipper kid?
disabilities. Yeah,
Right.
he's drawing a clue for Batman, and he tells Batman that basically this big strong guy, he's basically trying to tell Batman the big strong guy did this bad thing. Yada yada
Mhm.
yada. Batman in the third panel busts out of the house, runs into this van, hops into the back, and you see it, it's so fucking fluid. And then
That's
the
I
three
love that. Yeah, yeah,
these
yeah.
three panels right here, he knocks.
I always love that.
God, it was so awesome.
Yeah.
This, I mean, that just the transition, just to be like, hey, all right, I got to think about that later. Boom, busting out, running, gonna do the shit. Yeah,
Mhm.
jump in the back, doop doop doop, pow, and yeah, splitting that top panel into three to
Right.
denote the time
Because it
shift.
gives you a little bit of he's taking care of business in those stages, right? He does one thing in the first panel, another thing in the second panel, and then another thing in the third panel. If it had just been one single panel, you could have done that with the wood balloons and you would have still gotten the sense of time moving forward. But by giving you those breaks, it gives you that solid beat, like bang, bang, bang,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when Batman finally finishes the guy, you're waiting for it, right? Because here's the thing. Well, here's one of the great things about comics, Ed, is like we see the page all at once. We can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the page all at
Mm-hmm.
once, but you follow it panel by panel. So
Mm-hmm.
on some part of your brain, you recognize that Batman's knocking that guy out, but you're waiting for it. You're not really acknowledging it until the
Mm-hmm.
page catches up, and then
Yeah.
you have this moment of synchronicity, right? Like this, like it
Nice.
all comes together for you, and it gives it that extra moment of impact. That's the real magic of comics, is that you as you know we're unconsciously aware of so much stuff going on around us all the time, but we chunk it down into little bits of information so that we can digest it and get through the day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you when you flip a page, like the only time you're ever really surprised by a comic book image is on the reveal when you flip a page, when you go from
Right.
that's why two-page spreads are so awesome. Is like what page one, I don't know what's happening next. Bang, two-page spread. I've revealed it, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
still good comic book readers and good comic artists work together. Like even if I flip a two-page spread and I see the whole image, I'll still just look at the top one and then go down the bottom ones and then follow the flow. And so on some level, even though I
Hmm.
knew it was coming, I allow myself to be surprised by the last panel. Right? It's this really interesting relationship of we're doing it together and we're agreeing on it. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, we are. I mean, that's a great point about us doing it together, us
yeah,
assembling this story together. Let me take a look at which this one is. So that's that one. I also wanted to show another. quick look at a scripting thing. I don't know if I have the preceding page, the one where basically it's so dope, but I think I didn't load it in here. But
Oh God, it's a
basically,
great one. Right.
in the preceding page of this story, which is like fuck, I forgot what it's called. It's in, I think, Detective Comics 410. If you look in that omnibus you have there,
I have it right here.
it
Hang on just a second.
yeah, but in that issue, basically Batman has come to a place and he's tracing this guy, and the guy uh is a bad outlaw basically,
Right.
and he chases him to this place and has an interaction with these people.
Hang on a second. Let me shine some light on this. There we go. Do you want to slide me over to the middle panel?
Oh yeah, let me.
If you can see. So there's the one, right? There's that page.
Mm-hmm.
And the page right before it.
Right. Yes. And so the Batman is moved a little bit to your right, I think. Your
This one?
but yeah. So yeah, on that page, Batman, I think I have it here too. Batman is sort of
Oh yeah, there you go.
yeah, Batman is saying basically, dude, I want to bring you to justice, you big strong guy, because basically the big strong guy was trying to put off these murders on the guy that
Right.
Batman had originally chased over there, and he says you can call this a promise from the grave, and
Hmm.
he throws a little rope down to that in the middle panel. He throws a little rope down, and Homeboy says basically jump off this edge, and I won't kill this kid. And he goes, well, you'll probably do it anyway after I'm dead. He's like, don't worry about that. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. And Batman goes, all right, I'll jump over the side. So he jumps over the side, and he ends up doing that swinging panel that I had queued up. And the thing is, I love the fact that it's there in the sketches. Like when
Mm-hmm.
you look
Right.
at the sketch, Batman he's already as the kid falls on the left, Batman
Yeah.
catches him and then pushes off and swings back in through the door. But you can see it in the raw sketch.
Yeah.
It's all there. I just think it's one of these. I think this is a Titanic work as
Well, no,
far
because
as a
it's
page.
he's doing that thing again where it's not just the beats that are happening in the panels or the story. He's superimposing another level of story, right? Like Batman clearly knows that guy's going to throw the kid out, so
Mm-hmm.
we know what's going to. So as the reader, you know what's going to happen, and so you
Mm-hmm.
know, and so but you also see it all happen together, but you let it flow because of the S curve. You let it flow, and so you have that moment of relief when Batman actually catches the kid
Mm-hmm.
and
I
then
mean, and
swings in the window. Yeah, no, it's fantastic storytelling. Well, it's just story at such a different level.
I mean, and that's kind of what the whole point of this talk is, honestly. I mean, we could wax Rhapsodic forever about his different virtues. I got a few
Right.
odds and ends pictures that I'm going to show as we round out here,
Mm.
but the overall majesty of Neil can't be really encapsulated in any number of pictures because the impact that he's made, that Joker story gave us this classic image, and I just wanted to say, it's my dream to talk to a real comic book artist about this sequence that's on the screen right now. I am
Mm.
literally living one of my dreams because I just, even as a kid, I was like, I gotta talk to somebody about this. This
Right.
is the shit, and I gotta know why it's the shit, and I gotta know like just the boxes, like the drawing itself. It's if you take the boxes away, it still functions, but the boxes make, as you stated, us take our time
Yeah.
to catch up to what's all the actions are and stuff. And but then there's moments in time that get frozen forever and indelibly imprinted on your memory, like
Yeah.
this motherfucker right
Oh,
here.
yeah. I
You
mean,
know what I
honestly,
mean?
if you love comics and you haven't tried to swipe that already, then you're missing out, right? Like I've drawn that a dozen times. I've stolen
Dude.
that verbatim on like because you can't help it. It's such a great pose. It does everything. I
Dude, it
mean, I'll
really
tell you without
is.
shame, I've stolen that a dozen times.
It really is, dude. You know what I did it for? Let's talk about our swipes then. I
Sure.
swiped it.
No shame.
I swiped it in high school
Uh-huh.
because there was the track and field team needed some kind of flyer or some
Gotcha.
shit, and I was a drawing kid, and I drew this verbatim, except it's a young black man with beautiful waves
Nice.
in his closely cropped hair, and he's got a tracksuit on, but that arm all the way down. Oh, and in
Right.
his right hand, I
Yeah.
put a pretty well drawn in perspective for a high schooler baton, because he
Oh,
had
cool.
grabbed the baton and he was
Right.
running. And I also I went through. I almost put Batman boots on him. I was like trying so hard to emulate Neal, and I was like,
Right.
no, no, no. I had to show regular calves and socks and shoes, and it was like, damn, even swiping is hard because you got to like figure out these other
Right.
things.
Well, I mean, apart from just how many times I've drawn it to try and figure out what's going on, like so you draw through his shoulders, you draw through all the muscles, you do all that, like you examine it and you do the X-ray on it and try and figure out like how is stuff linking up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know that I've drawn. I know that's been a Wonder Man pose. I know for sure it's been a Flash pose. Um,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I also know not just the drawing as a whole that I've stolen a million times. I have used pieces of it. Like one of the classic ones I love is taking that forearm that left arm that's coming forward. I will throw it back and make it just a big swinging arm, right? So you show more that yeah.
Oh.
And now you look, you'll see it. It's in there a lot.
Yeah. See, I see what you're saying.
Right? So you can take pieces like, oh, look at how because just look at the knee on the back left leg, the lighting he uses on the knee. Like that's a master
Yeah.
class of how to draw that leg. And
Yeah.
that leg comes up all the time, right? Like if you're drawing a superhero, you're gonna draw a straight back leg. And that has everything you need to know about it.
Yep. It's definitely a primer. And I
Yeah.
love, and I mean, every human being on earth that has drawn comic art has taken that right knee leg
Yeah.
situation, and the way that
Exactly.
the calf is abbreviated with, but and just how much of the foot disappears behind the calf
Right.
and how broad is the calf. This is pretty much a masterclass. Although, like I said, we started drawing some skinny knees back in the 90s, boy.
Right.
You know, uh and I just wanted to also look at a couple other odds and ends that are, to me, seminal images from my, first experiences with him. I
Sure.
remember reading continuity comics,
Hmm.
and
Oh
I
yeah.
loved Armor.
So
I
good.
thought I thought Armor was the fucking shit. You could not tell me Armor wasn't a great comic. I loved it.
I loved
And
Armor, yeah. I loved Miss Mystic was great too.
oh yeah, dude. And so, and look at this. On the left is a very small, I think, drawing, and he just sort of roughs in the perspective.
Hmm.
And then I think that's either tracing and or photostat of, the background buildings.
Right.
But you can see how he tightened up the figure, and it's like I'm almost thinking this is a blow up as well. And I
Right.
just love if you can see that there's some kind of energy or glint or something coming out of
Coming
his
off his
right
eye, yeah.
eye.
Yeah,
I
totally.
fucking love that, and I love that even,
Yeah, it's a good one.
dude, and even in the sketch, right? And I love, okay, talk about that back arm and
Mhm.
punching and shit. That back arm going back with the sigh
Yeah,
is masterful. And his little, and also, last things last, that his bandana, the basic shape of flowing fabric,
yeah.
is the constant bane of cartoonists. And if you look at this, I don't even know if it's naturalistic, but it's perfect the way that his bandana is moving
Well,
to
yeah,
show the movement.
the trick like, so one of the things that's great, and I try to do this whenever I design a character. When I did Solitaire for Malibu, I gave him a scarf,
Mm-hmm.
a big flowing scarf that had strands coming off of it, and I did that for a couple reasons. One, I always wanted to have him do scarf fighting, kung fu scarf fighting, with it,
Sick.
and it was weighted, so I wanted to have him use it as a whip eventually. But mostly, you need something to show if a character, especially a martial arts kind of character,
Mm-hmm.
you want to show them, or a cape, right? You want to show them moving. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
best ways to show where a character has been and how they're moving is just to show it through the cape or the cloth.
Yep.
And it's it is real. You want to do it realistically to make sure that it has weight and volume, but also you want it to show the action lines. So it's not that's not really how cloth works. So you have to so you fake it in this believable way. And I
Hmm.
studied him a ton when I was trying to figure out how to do that for my own books.
I mean, I absolutely agree with that assessment. And when you look at even the simple stuff like this Batman drawing,
Yeah.
look at this, man. Like that back leg is great. His open hands for
Mhm.
grabbing. I think a lot of people do fists
Right.
because open hands are hard because it's like drawing a fist is
Yeah.
drawing a unit.
Yeah.
Drawing a hand is drawing all this extra shit going on. And plus each finger has to have personality and blah
Right.
blah. And you can tell this is like a convention sketch. He probably dyed this up after he slapped it together. You know what I mean? This
Right.
is just like this is how I do. And again, the front forward, how he's driving off with that left leg,
Yeah.
powerfully plunging forward. The cape is communicating all that back stuff. That's basic. That's fine. The
Mhm.
foreshortening on the fucking arms is perfect
Right.
because you know that's more. When everybody started drawing Wolverine with his arms back,
Yeah. That they
and,
were looking at this, yeah, for sure.
dude,
Yeah.
and then last things last, this torso bend again. I find it extremely. It isn't as difficult as it used to be, but I've
Mhm.
been drawing for years, so it shouldn't be. But like, it's still a booger bear, as my dad used to say, to
Yeah.
fucking put that chest over a quad
Right.
reasonably and intelligently and realistically and anatomically correctly, at least
Right.
for cartooning purposes, put somebody's chest above their fucking patella in a way
Right.
that makes sense.
Well, because they are leaping, sprinting forward. And I was going to point out one thing too, Ed, that I'm sure you know, but like the difference between how the muscles in your forearm contract, right, when you're
Hmm.
making a fist as opposed to when your hand is open, you can
Huh.
see that he knows, like he's drawn the difference. So
Jeez.
it's just a
Jeez.
right. So he just know like different muscles flex as you do different things, and if you
Yeah.
and so he always drew that correctly, and no matter what the pose was, he always had the right muscles being tightened at the right time based on whatever the movement was.
Jeez
It's
Louise.
just it's just that extra level of believability, right? Because on some level, when you see it, even if you don't draw and you're not versed in the how to build a drawing or construct a drawing, you,
Mm-hmm.
it registers whether it's accurate or not. And so his drawings, even though they're hyper realistic and hyper expressive, they're always accurate.
Yeah, I wanted to look at this one. This one is like just obviously just a sketch they might have even drawn mostly in ink,
Mhm.
and you see still this beautiful fat little left leg
Yeah.
that goes down perfectly.
Yeah.
This left arm behind the body cavity.
Mhm.
That's still hella hard to draw, especially but just also Hal's shoulders would give a linebacker a run for their money,
Right.
even though the rest of his body's pretty lithe because it almost helps with the perspective for certain parts to overlap and certain parts to be so big. And
It does.
you know what I mean? He just knows how to play his instrument. And I remember seeing this image in a magazine.
Oh God, I love that one. That's one of my all-time favorites.
You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like I love the trudging forward, and I always love Neil's legs, and that's the point I was going to say earlier. I love John Buscema,
Yeah.
and he is the Conan artist, period. And obviously, Neil got a lot of information from Buscema's Conan,
Mhm.
period. But like the exactly square cut brow
Mhm.
of I guess both Frazetta and Neil Adams Conan. To me, that's where it's at. Like if I could take all of John's drawings where he just sort of has him doing a Farrah Fawcett sometime or whatever, and just kind of put
Right.
those bangs on there from
Right.
Neil Adams. It's just there's something about Neil Adams, and plus, and Neil Adams Conan again. Neil Adams never really drew super buff people. I have seen him draw, of course, with the rest of Continuity Studios and the Krusty Bunkers, Mr.
Mhm.
T Comics, and Megalith, and things of this nature. So he's definitely drawn super buff characters. He's drawn the Hulk, but there's
Right.
always this lankiness. Do you
Mhm.
agree? There's this
Yeah.
lankiness to all of his figures.
his, I mean, I don't know how many heads that Conan is, but Megalith, was that his name?
Yep.
Um, was at least 12 heads high, right?
Yep.
So he drew everything was he drew everything accurate. He definitely had tall characters. They were definitely larger than life in that regard.
Well, and it just this back of Conan,
Hmm.
he's lanky. He's just a long, big guy
Yeah,
in a world of little punks who he's constantly having to come towards with axes and shit
yeah,
and whoop their ass and throw them down pits and stuff.
he's
But
so
I
good.
love this one because it was like this extreme foreground of the anvil that the
Hmm.
guy is working on and shit, and just him running into I deleted it, but anyway, him running into people. I love the naturalism of him running into actual other people,
Right.
and the relation. You can see how much bigger Conan is than other people, as I elucidated, but like it's drawing regular people that makes the superhero stand out so much.
Exactly. It's by comparison. If everyone's Conan shape, then he's not different. He's not special, right? So being able to draw just a regular person, a weak person, a heavy person, and then next to them standing Conan. And also, just in this one, Ed, look how his sword and the anvil pointing back towards Conan's, the base of his sword, which comes up back up, and it all forms this kind of like arrow pointing at Conan.
Damn it, Jeff. See, and this is the great part about having your book. Is you are a big proponent of like arrows, shooting, action at stuff.
Yeah,
Where did you learn that?
I don't. I think quite honestly, Ed, is because I'm not an intuitive artist. Like I don't, because I don't know how much these guys think about this, but whenever I'm trying to, I think you're right. I think these guys just knew the rules of construction and the rules of storytelling so intimately that they probably just did it without subconsciously. They just did it without planning it or thinking about it and had it all work out perfectly because they did know their instruments so well. They knew their tools so well. They did their scales all the time, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
For me, I always feel like I have to be doing my scales to do a good drawing. Like I have to think about that that's it spends it's what I actually spend most of my time thinking about, making sure that this pole is in the right place, or that this guy's elbow points to the right thing, or
Yeah.
if this person is looking in the right direction, that makes you move this way. Um, just because I think it is comics and drawing are it's such a subtle magic that it's the spell is easily broken, and I always am trying to make sure that the spell that I give myself every benefit and every little backup, every like I throw in all the eyes of Newt and all the whatever I can to make sure that the spell is as strong as possible because it's to me it's so fragile and I've never been able to feel it, so I always have to overthink it.
Well, I mean, I'll just say I respect your work. It doesn't seem overworked. It
Mm,
seems like a natural doing what they do. So the fact that you're doing all that, I think on Winning Time they described it, and people have talked about like geese or swans.
mm.
Swans are beautiful up top, but under that water, they're paddling their fucking ass off.
Right,
you know, you know what I
right,
mean? So I
right,
think
right.
that's what most people are,
Mm.
and I guess it's definitely what most artists are. Looking at this one, giving it a little glance here,
Oh God,
this sort of almost clockwise situation that's happening with the panels
right.
to denote like all this flying and fighting and jazz. Because again, oh, and I'll say something, Neil just barely loses the Conan battle to a person who drew Conan for fucking 75 years, the best of anybody. So that's how great Neil is.
Right.
But Neil is the best artist of the regular Warren Worthington Angel
He does
that there
such a good Angel.
ever
Oh,
was.
I've always loved his Angel. The only person I thought that ever really came close was maybe Paul Smith, um, for
Oh
just
yeah,
sort
we're
of the
gonna.
elegance of his Angel. But no,
Yeah,
Neil's got the best. He's got the best, and I love his Cyclops too.
yeah. I mean, yeah, dude. He gives them such humanity
Mhm.
because they could just be boring. I'm the leader guy. I fight people, blah blah,
Right.
or I'm handsome and I'm beautiful. Like he gives the angel this weight. And so yeah, any chance you get, people out there to look at Neil Adams doing the X-Men, I would highly recommend to check out those issues because they really show a lot of the dopest shit about the X-Men,
Hmm.
and we're really setting up that Claremont era. And I picked this because that shape in the middle, the
Right.
shape that he's playing with right here with this is just so interesting to me. And I just really wish I had a damn, fucking, Dominic Toretto is driving up my street. Fucking, okay, the story says, "Hey, I'm Lorna Dane. I'm a
Hmm.
piece of shit. I don't even know how to use my magnetic powers that good." And the very first picture is her floating an object over to her, and the object dropping because
Right.
she can't quite maintain her magnetic hold on it.
Hmm.
A lot of times, people will tell you that you can't draw this and that in one panel, but it's
Right.
that is a lot of shit drawn in one panel, so we don't have to think about for the rest of the story. Is she a confident person? We know she's not from the first panel. We saw
Right.
her in physical action and her words drop something,
Right.
and it's just beautifully communicated in one image. Like he's probably, like you said about that diving image, he's
Hmm.
probably one of the only guys who would get one of these scripts from an amateur and be like, "Oh yeah, I see what he's talking about," and just
Right.
be able to do it in whatever panels.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point. That's a great observation. He layered so much storytelling into every drawing that you almost take it for granted. Like, oh, we're seeing her fail in that first scene, and then we're seeing her, and then we see the ramifications of that, and then the going from a medium shot where we see a full figure of her drop the thing, then jacking the viewer up high for
Mhm,
what's going on, everything's shaking, and then slamming the viewer back down low, right? Like
mhm,
that that jerking motion will make you dizzy a little bit. And the
mhm.
way he frames like they're not squares and they're weird shapes. So you're automatically off balance as the viewer. Like,
Yes, yes, and the last one being like she's looking up at something that's
right.
obviously very powerful. I think the next page was like a big, giant spread. We don't got time for that. We're going granular on this one, baby.
Right, right.
Okay, I wanted to look at this. I wanted to just take a look at this because it's so fucking weird.
Hmm.
This is him doing a cover of a $6 million Man, I guess, magazine or some shit, like one of those old epic magazines, maybe like Rampaging Hulk or something
Right,
like that about the Bionic Man. And this is probably done with Doc Martin dies as well, and obviously heavily referenced
right.
because you had to, and that was his bread and butter. I could just think this is such a weird job for Neil, like such a titan, and he just sort of like, you know, he's so good at likeness that he would definitely get all these jobs. His studio would get all of these
Yeah,
jobs.
I think that one of the things that really, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Comics does, I mean, it pays okay. If you can be a full time comic book artist, it's not a bad job. It's definitely a lot of work, and but if you are successful and you work hard, that you can make a decent living at it, right? But comics has always been a feast or famine kind of job. Like sometimes you're doing
Mm,
great, sometimes you're not, depending on the nature of the business, or who your friends in are, if you're friends with editors who can give you work, or if there's work to be had. Like there's a lot of variables that make comics a very tumultuous career. And so Neil did a lot of advertising. He did a lot of other stuff. And
mhm.
so and made a lot more money doing that stuff. So I think this is not a surprise to me at all. They probably paid him good to do these covers, and he probably knocked them
Mhm.
out with his crew, and got the
Yep.
job done. And I bet he did tons of advertising stuff we've never seen that is very
Oh,
much like
yeah.
this. Yeah.
I was gonna be really dorky, and I have, again, in that sketchbook, there's a lot of his advertising stuff. I
Mhm.
kinda just wanted to focus on the comics and stuff because
Right.
I think those are labors of love, you know what I mean? But this is another of the
Oh,
Tarzan book covers.
love that one.
And this shit right here, man, I had those Tarzan books. And, when you're a little kid, you don't know about politics or anything. So you read whatever you read, you're having your adventure.
Right.
And then later on, it gets ruined for you. Just like, Tarzan kind of sucks ass. But when I was a little kid, man, this
Yeah.
thing right
John
here.
Carter of Mars is tough too for that same reason, right? Like,
It's like,
listen, I love John Carter of Mars. I love the Frank Frazetta drawings from back in the
mhm.
day. I have a ton of them. I have a ton of the Tarzan ones. I have, I loved all that stuff. Um, and then later on, we are like, oh, Confederate.
Yeah.
Oh, like, damn it. Um,
Dude, it's like, hey, well, how you think I felt? You know who my one of my favorite characters back in the days was? Fucking when I was a kid and I was reading comics, especially the Mark Teixeira Hex, where
oh yeah,
Jonah Hex is thrown into the future.
yeah.
My man, I fucking cut my teeth on those comics, and then I was
That's
like,
good stuff.
this motherfucker's a Confederate in the future. What
Right.
the Oh my god. But yeah, I love this Tarzan thing because you can probably elucidate the directional devices abound,
Oh yeah, of the spears and of the
you know,
arrows. Yeah.
and just the fact that he is so bound but so powerful. If viewers can zoom in on his face or whatever, or get the copy and zoom in for yourself,
Right.
he's got a look on his face like you done fucked up now.
Exactly. He's not in danger. He's just
Yeah.
now he's pissed.
Yeah, and the
Right.
whole jungle is coming to like defend him.
Yeah.
It's like, geez, Louise, as fucking preposterous as that is, it is also super awesome.
Yeah. It's super,
When
super
you think
cool.
about it. But again, like I said, fucking Tarzan, geez, Louise. And
Yeah.
then we got this
Yeah.
classic Superman.
I have drawn I've this is the one, and whenever someone asks you like, "Oh, hey, do me like like my character but done as Superman." Right?
Yeah.
Like this, I want my character breaking chains, or I want, this is always the reference point.
Yep.
This is one of the most, I think, well, like, how do I even describe it? I'm doing that thing with the words again. Like it's popular, it's well known. It's Here's what it is. It's in everyone's subconscious mind of Superman.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
it's one of those things that is in the Jungian subconscious. Like this is when even someone who doesn't read the book, they know what this image is. It's in there deep.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's, I mean, and I would say, for the layman, iconic, you know?
Mhm.
It has a certain, we did an episode recently on The Greatest Pod, talking about Superman and why Superman seems to be, I think you'd like it, dude, because we come up with the 10 commandments of making a good Superman story, so
Oh,
I'll
right
I'll
on. Yeah,
just
I had
give
to
you
listen to
that
that one. Well, your
I'll
show
give
is
you
great.
that teaser, but,
Great.
oh, man, come on, man, thank you so much, and
Yeah,
I
I'm a
obviously
patron.
dude, you fucking are, which
Yeah.
constantly blows my mind. Don't make me cry here, Jeff.
All right.
Uh,
No, everyone should be a patron. It's a good show. And if you're a patron, you get some cool drawings from Ed.
dude, the next ones I don't know if they came yet, but the next ones are pretty cute.
All right.
And because I'm doing a little bit more uh, strips, like one panel strips. Like if Gary
Okay.
Larson wanted
Oh,
to
right on.
draw a thing about Nightwing and somebody,
Very cool.
that he would do this. You know what I mean? So I'm doing that sort of style. But I will say this: the iconic nature, the break in, it's been homage so much. I just wanted to include this because it is, like you said, it seems like it's even in the Jungian subconscious of everybody. It's really oh, and I wanted to show you this real quick. This is
Oh yeah.
another goddamn Tarzan, but this is beautiful because it's Neil inking John Buscema.
Oh yeah.
And you
Beautiful.
see that length of the figure is John Buscema being like, "Well, Tarzan ain't as buff as my boyfriend Conan,"
Right,
you know
right.
what I mean? So, and then Neil comes in, and you can see it's pretty fucking faithful
Yeah.
to the lines and stuff. He doesn't, sometimes Sienkiewicz or will ink something, or Sienkiewicz inking Sal Buscema. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's not what this is. This is real fidelity to the image and being like, yeah, this is great.
You
And like I
remember
said,
when Bill inked John Buscema on those Wolverines?
yes,
Those were so good. Those
that
are
was
so those are so
fucking
good.
baller. That number 10, I think Wolverine number 10 where Wolverine and Sabretooth have a fight because Sabretooth
In the old
kills.
in the old cabin in that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
and they
that's
fight their way up to the top of the mountain. But yeah, that cover, that iconic cover,
yeah, man.
yeah, inked by
That's the money.
Sienkiewicz.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the fucking money,
Yeah.
bro. You
That's
are
a good one.
absolutely right about that. All right, as we round out some of these odds and ends, one thing. Let's see if I showed this before. Yeah, prepare yourself, woman. Got that one. One of the other things I wanted to show you that was seminal for me. I showed it at the beginning, but this fucking image is great.
Yeah.
Like I keep coming back to it. That one, I gotta say, he understands Spider-Man. The little I've only seen him draw Spider-Man this one time,
Mm,
and he really gets it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I love that image, but I also love this. For
Yeah, that's
some
a classic.
reason,
That's just a
I
classic.
I think this is fucking awesome. Once again, I think that might be a photostat in the background,
Mm, mhm.
and just the storytelling therein, even in the drawing, once again, Green Arrow for once seems to be just sort of taciturn, like, "Hey man, we lost. We got to go. I got a lady. She's down. We should probably get the fuck out of here."
Right.
And just Hal Jordan's face and body language is just like, "No." The fists, the fucking crouch.
Yeah.
I just
He's ready to go.
it's and Neal did a great thing in regards to being able to put people's heads in the middle of their chests without them looking squat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Well, no
it's
one does the trapezius shoulder connection better than him.
come on, man.
That's
You're right.
yeah, no one
You're,
does it. I mean, that's it's such a hard getting that weird those weird divots of the deltoid to match with the traps and into the neck and into the sternomastoid. It's just it's a hard combination of muscles.
it's fucking amazing. I also wanted to look at this one. I love this cover.
Hmm.
Superman crying because he can't feed the world,
Yeah.
and Batman being like, "Get off me, poor people. This is too much like my regular life. Get off me." But
Right.
I love this image because again, this is a 15-cent comic
Hmm.
drawn this good. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the comic ain't 15 cents now, but you understand what I'm saying? Like
Oh
the
yeah,
time when
absolutely.
things cost 15 cents and a house cost $4 and change, this guy was drawing this good. And like you said, at the speeds that were necessary
Yeah.
for that work back then. I want to show this Batman
Oh, that's always been one of my favorites, where he uses the
mhm,
cape to as a
mhm,
framing element.
mhm. I mean, this one was beautiful. I just wanted to show this one because I feel like this one and I think this one
Mm,
to me are Batman. I
yeah,
love this image. It's half and half evil. I think I might have read it in the greatest Batman stories of all time back in the days or something like that. And it's just a stupid story of Batman chasing fucking Two-Face into a bog and beating his ass on a boat. That's
hmm,
all it is. And it's amazing.
yeah.
Because and it starts with this type of imagery with the cape coming down through the foliage. It's like it's the suggestion that he shouldn't be here in these type of environments.
He doesn't fit.
You,
His cape doesn't fit.
you know?
Right.
And that gives half of those old comics that power. Like,
Mhm.
yes, I'm in the Tibetan mountains.
Right.
I am also Batman. So let's get it on. You
Right.
know what I mean? That oh, and I wanted to show this I don't know if I showed this one earlier. This is
Oh,
the redo
the redo. Yeah. It's. I
of
mean,
his
I
iconic
love them
thing.
both, but this one's got so much. Like, it's interesting to how he's drawn the buildings,
Right. Right.
and I think
And it
that totally works because, but it's a different Superman.
yeah, it you know what? It is because that Superman was more, for lack of a better word, iconographic.
Mhm.
This one, it seems like a guy. Like he
Well, also he
probably got a
seems he's happier, right? Like
that's true.
it's it's a different vibe, right? Like um the other one he was more solemn and stern, if I remember correctly. He wasn't. I don't remember him
Mm,
smiling on the other one, but
no, no.
yeah. But also, I mean,
Um,
that's the you can reinvent the wheel so many times, and I do think that's an amazing drawing. But there's something like the city now becomes as important as him, and maybe that's what he was going for. That he wanted him
dude,
and the city to be both part of that story, whereas before the city wasn't the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. There's something, and see, that's the type of insights. I'm telling you, that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Right, right.
And I just want to show a couple of these, just the pencils of Superman
Oh,
Muhammad Ali.
love that
Shit is
one.
so fucking tight, man.
Man, he's such a good he nails Muhammad's face. Look at that.
I mean, it's just, and I'm telling you, my final image is gonna be such a weird letdown. You're gonna be like, what the fuck? Why are you showing this one after all these break images? But these are the ones that mean something to me.
Mhm.
As we round out here, this one is a big deal as well.
Oh yeah, this one's huge.
This, I mean, this right here, I want to spend about maybe a minute or two
Sure.
talking about this one.
Oh,
This one to me is, it's about heroism to me, and it's about how
yeah.
people respond to heroes. Like the fact that Muhammad Ali, for the purposes of the story, and I think Perry White or some damn body, that guy, I don't know who that is. I haven't read the
Mm,
comic in a long time, but basically these two guys are making sure that all these aliens and reporters and assholes, they got like cameras, like super space cameras. They're trying to
mhm,
get a shot of how fucked up Superman is and like
right,
almost revel in how he got his ass beat. And Muhammad Ali is not interested in that.
right.
Nor is the other guy. They're trying to get Superman to medical attention to save him
Mhm,
because he is such a hero and he got fucked up like this, trying to be like a good guy. And there's just something so powerful about the pushes that each of
right.
the characters on the side of him are doing. It just, it's so
One of the things
great.
that's great about this image is the angle he picks. Once again, we talked earlier about he picks the hardest angle, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Or
mm-hmm.
I don't know if he picks the hardest angle. Let's just say that he never shied away
Yes,
from a difficult angle, right?
yes.
Um, so drawing Superman, that figure, it's just a, I mean, basically just a standing figure. That's not that difficult, right? That's not, we can do that. You can look at that and you can see that. But drawing people moving from basically an extreme top down angle is very hard to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not just people moving. He's got aliens moving for like it's so all the lines. If you can see all the
Mm.
various shapes, like the guys in the top, their cameras, their little tentacly things, their nose, that guy's little arm, the Ali's head, right? This guy's hand, his all the angles are all coming in, and they're all pointing at Superman's S, right? They're all
Mm-hmm.
pointing all the subtext,
Oh wow. You're
all that is pointing, everything's pointing towards his S, like Perry's arm. I think it's Perry, right? Perry's
yeah.
arm, that guy's leg, that guy's the angle of the head to the other head. This guy, they're all the camera, they're all pointing down the symbol of the S,
And
right?
his right
So
arm is framing it too.
yeah,
You know what I mean? If you want to take it there.
yeah, because it's not even pointing to his face, right? It's pointing to his symbol, the symbology of him. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that makes this page work so well is we are, and like the coloring and everything, like what we see is the S. Everything else becomes secondary. Like that story, the umbrella of that story is the S. Everything else happens underneath that umbrella.
Dude, I mean, you have an X-ray vision for this stuff, which is why, like I said, I
Well,
I,
I mean,
I
I've like
definitely.
this is. I think when you're starting to compose a drawing, like w- every line means something. Every time, everything you put somewhere says something, right? And you can
Mm-hmm.
either do that on purpose, or
Mm-hmm.
it can accidentally happen, and you can give the wrong information, right? So as you pull it all together, that's what the real storytelling is. That's what the real composition is that I have like not me, but like as the artist, Neal conveyed to you many layers of what's happening in that drawing, all
Mm-hmm.
with the emotional through line that the S is okay, right? There's no blood on the S. It's not torn. It's not fucked up, even though he's got some being like that. He still is super. He's still
Huh.
okay.
Man, that is really fucking insightful, bro. And I really think that's why it gives so much heroism to me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Because
mean
of all
that's
those
because you're
factors that you
responding
said.
to it. I mean, the drawing is can't be beat, obviously, right? Like you can't. His skills are unparalleled when it comes just the mechanics of drawing. But the true genius of that drawing is the composition, is what he's
Mm-hmm.
doing, like what story he's telling with it. And he did that all the time. He did that every time.
dude, it's pretty amazing, and it's also like showing a level of skill that is inside you. And I think
Mhm.
that's why I just wanted to, as our dismount here, we're gonna do this and we're gonna tell some stuff about Neal and our lives, you know, over Neal's
Okay.
picture, I guess. But this last image I want to show, it's just a very simple panel, but I
Mhm.
love it. And it is this.
Oh yeah.
This this is the motherfucking shit.
Yeah.
This right here is all of it to me. You get this almost lupine
Right.
action of Batman was doing parkour before parkour was
It's
parkour,
a classic parkour move.
right?
Yeah.
He's doing this. Come on, man. He's envisioning things in the future all the
Yeah.
time. And that's what we're going to talk about as we dismount here. Fucking, this is just beautiful. And the action that you
Yeah.
get with very few little motion lines. But again, he doesn't shy away. There's so many people who think they're great cartoonists who think, oh, well, I don't want to use a fucking action line to
I love
show
a motion
something.
line. Give
Come
me
on.
yeah, I love give me a blur. Give me all that stuff.
This is fucking cartooning, man.
Yeah.
You avail yourself of all the iconography, all the tools
Yeah.
that you can use, and just this door slamming. The whole page is beautiful. But I picked this panel because I'm telling you, when I was a kid, I think this is the first time I understood how many choices are made in
Mhm.
any comic book image, because I'd seen, you know, Indiana Jones roll under a thing,
Right.
or this guy kind of jump and then do a somersault maybe, or something like that. But
Right.
this guy is doing this. He's jumping to where he's got his head up. And whatever he's going to encounter in that room, he's
Mhm.
got his head up, and he can bound off of his hands to get back up to his feet.
Right.
And he's also crouching to get under the door. This is an all-purpose, unprepared for anything move that he's
Mhm.
doing. Amongst thousands of different ways he could have done this, he did this. And Neal went through probably 10, 15, 100 of these things in his mind and picked this motion. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's a perfect comic panel.
It is a perfect comic panel. And also he's leaping into the light,
Ah, nice. Yeah.
right? Like that the light's coming from off panel. Like that's why you get that diagonal shape of the shadow. And
Mhm.
if you look at the empty spaces in the grating, right, the shadow lines all point up and to the right to where the light's coming from. Like you can
Oh,
see, and they're
yeah.
consistent with the shadow along the wall. So
Yeah.
so all that stuff registers in your mind, and it makes that drawing real, right? It puts that drawing in real space in a way that it wouldn't if he hadn't added that little detail.
I mean, and so this is the kind of the genius that we're talking about.
Right.
This guy just gave us so much. It gave us so much. Period. But I'll say what he gave to me, and then you can say what he gave to you, and we can be on
Mhm.
out of here.
Okay.
To me, he gave this sense of possibility, and I know that's probably been talked about ad nauseum of different comic book artists, but like just for what could be done in that medium. Because again, I started probably reading comics religiously in the 80s, so like people like John Byrne, you know, when I was
Mhm.
like a little kid in the barbershop picking up tattered copies of
Right.
something, they would be a little bit older than I was, so they'd be like 83, 84, or whatever
Mhm.
comics, and then I'd be perusing their, you know. And I think the first comic I ever read was John Byrne Fantastic Four, where Frankie is coming out of Galactus's hand.
Oh, that's a great issue.
You know what I mean?
I
So
love that
so
one.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, shit like that. So that's the,
Right.
like when I'm a kid, and I guess the later 80s, I'm getting early and mid 80s comics
Mhm.
joined on me. And then next thing you know, you're in the 90s and you're worshiping, if you're my age, you're worshiping Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane like they're gods, which at the time they were, and Mark
Yeah,
Silvestri, who is a god of illustration himself and one of the children of Neal,
yeah,
definitely
100%.
one of the children of Neal.
Right.
So it's like, so the and all of those guys were, I don't want to cut anybody short. All of them loved Neal. All of them took stuff from Neal, and including his layouts and jazz. So blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
Neal had such an impact on my life in that way. And then Continuity Studios, when I found out what that was and I started buying those comics, there was just something like, I'm not gonna say they were always the greatest fucking comics. I am gonna say that they were very adventurous, and
Oh,
they were
yeah.
trying things that other companies wouldn't try, and they jumped on every fad too. They had fucking unbreakable covers, So
Yeah.
you sometimes the cover would be unbreakable. Sometimes it'd be, they did what they needed to do. But all I'm saying is all of that to say, when I moved out here, I lived in the valley, and I would drive into Burbank on the street called Magnolia. And
Hmm.
on the right side of Magnolia, somewhere between a Ralph's and fucking all the Burbank Mall shit, was Continuity Studios, or one of their old
Oh, right
offices.
on, right on.
And I used to drive by there and just look at and I think it was a shuttered location of Continuity Studios,
Mhm.
but it still had the iconography up there. And it just cemented home for me, a young person coming out here to pursue screenwriting and all the other arts, including comics.
Mhm.
It There was something about Neal had been in that building.
Right.
Neal had been where I am. Neal has walked these streets.
Mhm.
It made him so real to me, so that him being so great made a level of greatness be real to me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, I mean, one of the things that was like having a real person behind the comic or behind whatever the artistic endeavor is that you can believe, oh, that's just a person,
Mhm.
makes your personhood easier to expand. Like, oh, I'm a
Mhm.
person. That guy's a
Mhm.
person. He can
Mhm.
do all these crazy things. Like, he can make these worlds up, and he's Neal Adams. I'm also a person. That means that I can do these things on some level, right? That these things
Mhm.
become possible. I think I wasn't. It wasn't until I don't know how old I was when I realized that people drew comics, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't even remember the first comics I had. People's names were in them, right? Because some of like it didn't
Yeah.
happen for a while, right? But then once I realized, like, oh, that's a guy. These are being made by just regular dudes. I'm a regular dude. I can make a comic someday, right? So that connection opened up a whole world for me. And then after that, I was done. I'm like, oh, well, this is people make comic books. I'm gonna make comic books. That's all I'm gonna do. And that's all I've ever really done, right? Like, I never had any other design, I never had any other job skills whatsoever other than drawing. And so it never occurred to me, one of the reasons I think that I was able to make it in comics, because it's hard to break in. It takes a lot of failure. Is that it never occurred to me that I could do anything else. So I didn't have any other. I didn't ever had a backup plan. Like, if I don't do
Mm.
comics, then I don't have anything. I have no other skills. I can't throw a football. I can't do anything else. And so, but the realization that it is just regular people that made them, I think, allowed me to dream that dream.
Well, I mean, and you said it, like Neil's contributions into creators' rights and stuff
Oh yeah.
kind of made you be able to exist, because of the fact that, like, the people who struck maybe the biggest blow for creator rights besides Neil were
Mhm.
obviously the Image guys,
Right.
being like, okay, we are more important than Spider-Man. We are more important than
Exactly.
X-Men.
Right.
And Neil was the very first, maybe obviously Kirby, excuse me.
Right.
Obviously Kirby was bigger than any character. But Neil
Right.
was the only other person that I ever knew that was bigger than any character.
Neil had
And yeah.
Neil had so much power that he could actually call and tell a studio, it was like, hey, I think this guy's good. You should hire him, and then they would hire him. So he had a ton of
Mhm.
influence and he had a ton of power. He was the most popular artist. But one of the things that he did that I personally benefited from
Mhm.
is that he was able to take Marvel to court, because before Neil, Marvel, DC, all these companies just destroyed the original art. Like, you would draw a page as an artist, you would give it to the company, they would make a print plate out of it, and they would print the comic, and they would store the original art, but then they would just destroy it. They would shred it, they would throw it in the garbage. They just didn't care about it. It had no value at all. And
Mhm.
so I have a great story here that I wanted to read. I didn't
Mhm.
want to get it wrong, so I printed it up. Hang on just one second.
Not a
Um,
problem.
so one of the things that Neil did is okay. He made the argument that oh, here it is. So Neil, I'm going to just read it verbatim. So Neil tells a story that when he walked in the production office of DC Comics and he saw the paper cutter shredding pages, he said to him, "What are you doing?" The guy said, "Well, we have to make room for other stuff, so I'm shredding old pages." Neil said, "Don't do that. I'm going to go talk to somebody. And when Neal started to walk out of the room, the guy continued to shred pages. Neal turned around and said, I'm going to say this a different way. If you destroy another page while I'm gone, I'm going to punch you in the face.
Yep.
Right. And so, like, and then he was able to convince Marvel, like, you don't own this artwork. You own the right to reproduce it, but you don't own the original. And he was able to make the argument that if Marvel wanted to own the original, then they would have to pay the artist for the original. And so that's why they started giving the originals back, because they didn't want to pay and they didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to destroy them anymore. So that happened in 1987, right? Like, this is how recent
Jeez.
right? That happened in 1987. Neal was able to win that argument and he got a ton of Kirby pages back for Kirby, right? Because Marvel had just been holding on to them. And then because Marvel and DC, they didn't want to give the artists back their pages because the fear was if they had the originals, then the artist would claim some copyright. So they were able to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to give the artist back the original. And then Marvel and DC and all the other companies still owned, they paid for the right to print, and the artist had no copyright claim whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But getting our pages back allowed us to then own the pages and then to sell them. So we were able to increase our income. We were able to trade. I have a George Perez page that I traded for back in the 90s. And I know that I must have given like 5 or 6 Jeff Johnson pages. I'm like, here, however many pages of mine it will take to get one of the George pages. That seemed like a fair deal to me. But prior to 1987, all that shit might have just been destroyed. So now we have an entire market of original artwork. We have an entire industry of people selling pages, and they now have incredible value. And there's a lot more of them available than there used to be because now they're not destroyed anymore. And now that's thanks to Neal. And I started in 1991 drawing Wonder Man, and I got all my shit back. And that's only because 4 years previous to that, he had won this incredible court case. So it was I never even realized how close it was that I didn't, because I just took it for granted. I just took it. I'm
Oh
like,
my
yeah, you get your
God.
pages back. And I think a lot of us did doing comics in the 90s. Like, we knew that this had happened, but it was still before the internet, right? It was still
Mm-hmm.
before all this information was so available. So you would hear the story about how it happened. But now you can read about it. You can see the timeline. It was like, but even a lot of us drawing comics in the 90s didn't understand just how much we owed Neal.
Well, I mean, and you're talking about as we dismount here, the fucking owing Neal.
Yeah.
He's impacted upon my life because he impacted upon everybody who's
Mhm.
almost anybody who's seen media in the modern age it has been impacted by Neal Adams. So
Well, I
it's
mean,
not just comic fans.
The X-Men was going to get canceled before he drew it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
And
Green
it
Lantern,
just
Green Arrow, gonna get it wasn't a book. It was gonna get canceled before he drew it. Like, he saved so many books from just straight up getting canceled, and they became these icons in our own collective unconscious. They became everything to us. If
well,
he
I mean,
hadn't drawn them, that wouldn't have happened.
that the whole Green Arrow, this stupid ass Arrowverse.
Yeah,
You telling me they would make a whole universe around Green Arrow if he'd hadn't volunteered to draw the
right,
last few issues of, or rather to relaunch Homeboy? They didn't call it reboots back then, but
right,
he relaunched Homeboy with a new costume and
yeah,
facial hair
and that beard, yeah, yeah,
to give him a little edge. You know what I
mm-hmm.
mean? That's Neal, and obviously his impact upon Batman. I mean, you can
Yep,
go to a billion podcasts to hear about that.
right,
And in my life, I met Neal, I think maybe twice, but once like meeting, like, hey, how are you? Let's
mm-hmm.
talk a little bit type thing. I met him at a convention a couple years ago, and he signed my Muhammad Ali versus Superman print.
Classic,
And it was so funny because I had so many choices. I was gonna pick, yeah, I might have picked a Conan, I might have picked a this, picked a that.
right,
Picking Superman versus Muhammad Ali was perfect because it was like, I think Muhammad Ali, Superman, and Neal Adams make a perfect troika. You know,
yeah,
they're all matter of factly the best there is at what they do.
right.
And maybe Muhammad Ali is a little bit more boastful about it, and maybe Neal is a little bit more boastful about
It
it than
depends on the day,
Superman is.
right?
Well, but then Superman is.
True,
They're both less humble than Superman,
right.
but to me they have all the same sort of impact and ability. You know what I mean? Given
Mm-hmm.
the fact that like, uh, I just think they all changed the game, right? Superman changed how comic books are.
Yeah.
Neal Adams definitely changed how comic books are, and Muhammad Ali changed how being a famous person was. You know what I
100%.
mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like he wasn't famous like fucking Doris Day. I'm sorry, he wasn't. He wasn't famous like fucking Michael Jordan. He was famous in a different way, and I think
Yeah.
Neal is up there like that, eh, because of the fact that, like, if you think about all the you talk about rights, Siegel and Schuster talking about
Yeah.
I don't
We
remember
didn't
which
we
one
didn't
it
even get
was.
into any of that. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but just, Siegel and Schuster not getting paid properly for
Mhm.
Superman, and frankly never getting paid properly for Superman, but
Yeah.
Neal at least being able to negotiate them a pension.
Mhm.
Like, there's so many people, and I think people might think it's hyperbolic to mention Neal with Muhammad Ali and Superman and shit like that, but like, fuck that. Neal's impact on the world and the world that he had powers over
Mhm.
is almost equal to somebody like Muhammad Ali, or because like Muhammad Ali fought for people who are underrepresented. What
Right.
the fuck did Neal do? Neal fought for people who were underrepresented, the people who were really the driving force of whole soon to be billion-dollar industries.
Mhm.
You would get no shot at royalties and stuff without
No.
Neal,
Yeah.
you know?
Agreed. Yeah. I think that one of the things that's really great about comics, and apart from Neil and the comics that he did, but just comics in general, is they are a fundamental building block of every other art form
Yes.
since the 30s, right? So
Mhm.
since they've become popular, the stories that they've told have found their way into every other medium: film, TV, music, stage, right? Like, and I
Mhm.
think that the you can't take them, and they get credit now, though they don't get, in my opinion, as much credit as they deserve. But
Mhm.
Neil made it obvious, right? He's the one. He pulled that rug right out and be like, no, 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 it's all comics. It's all about comics. Comics is the alpha and the omega of all this other shit. And I
Mhm.
think that they deserve the respect. The people who make them and the people who read them deserve the respect of being one of the pillars of all entertainment, of all of society. And I think that he was a fantastic advocate for the power of comics and the people who make comics and like comics.
Dude, and I can't say it better than that. So,
Mm.
with that, thank you guys for listening to and watching this extra special episode of the Greatest Pod, celebrating the life and the legacy of Neil Adams. I couldn't have had a better expert witness in this to testify to his greatness than the great Jeff Johnson. His book, How to Draw Fight Scenes Like a Pro, is seminal reading. You might have to get it on eBay or some shit because he hasn't put the second edition out, I don't think.
I'm working on the second edition now. The old book is no longer available on Amazon. Like, they're gone. You can't find them. So you might be able to find a collector's item of it. But I've been working on the next volume for a while, so eventually it'll come out.
Well, I mean, I have a signed copy of it that I will be selling for $50,000. So if you
That's. I
want
mean,
one bad enough,
I hope you can get that for it. That would be great.
no, I would never sell it, Jeff.
Mm.
I really revere this book. And it's helped me a lot in my journey, and I know it's going to help me more as I understand more and more of it. It's a great instructional tome, and I'm looking forward to the second edition. Do
Thanks,
you
man.
have anything coming out that you want to plug? And obviously, please plug your shows, because in a lot of ways, the Drink and Draw community inspired me to get even more granular about comics and stuff, and like just kind of try to tell people what I know, try to bring on people who know more than me. Your shows have really helped to inspire me to do that rather than just kind of talk shit from the sidelines. So
Mm.
please hype whatever you got coming up and your own shows, please.
So at the moment, and it's been taking me a long time since I spend, like I said, obviously I'm a little bit anal when it comes to every little drawing aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm doing a storyboard for a show I can't really talk about at the moment, but I am also working on a comic through Image that'll be out hopefully sometime this year. And then I'm working on the show every week. We do another round on Wednesday. It's Drink and Draw Another Round. It's me, Scott Collins, Stephen B. Jones, with sometimes we have guests and sometimes we don't. Um, Sometimes we go panel by panel on a comic that we love and get as nerdy and in depth as this show when we talked about um, and when I get lost in the compositions and whatnot. And sometimes we just talk about Hard Target and how cool Jean Claude Van Damme is. So um, we're gonna have we have guests lined up for the next year. Hopefully, we'll have a lot of great episodes. But other than that, I think everyone should just go to the local comic book store and ask them what they should get.
Yeah, I think that is a good thing to end on, is that, as you stated, Neil showed us and lived the fact that comics are the alpha and the omega, but they are not respected as such.
Right,
All these like faux Target shirt wearing nerds who've never stepped foot in a comic shop or even stepped foot on fucking Comixology and said,
right,
let me look for something I've never heard of before. If you're denying yourself that just so you can stay in your little zone and be a fucking regular consumer, like the people who watch goddamn football or whatever, which I do. I watch football and
right,
basketball, so I'm not throwing shade,
right,
but I understand on those. I'm just a regular fat American consumer. So a lot of people with their comic stuff, they're a regular fat American consumer, or they don't consume it at all because they think it's just as good to watch the movies.
right.
And I'm telling you, there's a whole world in comics. There's different eras, different creators, different this, different that. So, goddamn, I wish that's how you know trickle down economics don't work.
Right,
Because if trickle down economics worked, comic book stores would be flooded with people from
right.
how much money the movies are making. But you know that's not true, and I wish we could make it more true.
Well, one of the things I think that I would like to just maybe to reiterate what you just said is like Neil showed so much of how comics could be and how much comics can influence other mediums, and he definitely brought them up to another level. And not just the quality of the art, but the care that the creators can make and what the audience can get out of them. I think the best way to honor the work that he put in and the love that he had for comics is for either go to Comixology or buy something online or go to your local comic book store. If you don't know much about comics, or you've always thought that comics aren't necessarily for me, I think that's just wrong. There's a comic, if you like reading, there's a comic book for you. There's endless genres. The book I'm working on with Image right now is um, I'm doing it with James Robinson, who is I'm sure you know is an amazing writer and just a great
Mm-hmm.
guy. But it's a fantasy. It's swords and sorcery. It's dragons. There's I just did a book for the Navy recently that's all super hardcore, technically accurate. I've done kung fu stuff, right? But that's just me. I'm just one guy. There's a million people doing great comics of every genre, every kind of story, at every price point, too, right? It's still the
Mm-hmm.
most affordable entertainment out there. It gives you the most bang for your buck. So go to a comic book store, and it's like I like start with a Neil comic, get an old Neil comic, and then pick a random new one.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
please leave a 5-star review, because I'm leaving a 5-star review on what Jeff just said. That's what you have to do. Please leave a 5-star review on our show so we can keep getting pumped out to more people. Please join the Patreon, patreon.com/the
Mhm.
greatest pod. And please follow the Drink and Draw Social Club on all forms. Follow all their shows, because Jeff and the guys really are a treasure to the industry and a treasure to us as fans. So thank you again for being a fresh a fresh guest, Jeff.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I will dismount by maybe trying to play this outro.
All
See you
right.
guys next time on The Greatest Pod.